Immortal Cultivation begins with time management. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyright or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 26. Ling Yunpo, you're in big trouble. Kingping Sword? Ling Yunpo frowned and said, yes. Kingping Sword said, Jing. Ling Yunpo ignored her and asked Kunlun Mirror, is what she said true? How could it be false? Kingping Sword said, is it Yo-Oh? What the hell is Yo-Oh? Kunlun Mirror protested. In the palace of the Queen Mother of the West, on the Ochai Terrace. What's wrong with calling you Yo-Oh? Kingping Sword said with a smile. According to your way of addressing, I should call you Jian Jian. Kunlun Mirror rarely complained. Okay, although it's not as nice as Kingping, it's okay. Kingping Sword said indifferently. Seeing that Kunlun Mirror did not refute, Ling Yunpo asked again. Kingping, what is your rank? What are your attributes? What are your Taoist methods? Rank? Kingping Sword said in surprise, isn't it a fairy sword? The Tiangan sword casting method only became popular 8,000 years ago. According to that calculation, you should be considered as the 10th rank now. Kunlun Mirror reminded. Then I'm a 10th order flying sword. Kingping Sword also acted quickly. As for the 5 elements attribute, it is actually tin head water. The 5 elements of NA are not popular now. Kunlun Mirror said again, you just need to say that the 5 elements belong to water. Oh, a 10th order water-based flying sword. Kingping Sword followed suit. As for the Taoism, keep it secret for the time being. What do you mean by keeping it secret for the time being? Ling Yunpo said dissatisfiedly, you are my flying sword, how can you keep it secret from me? This little brother. Kingping Sword reminded him, I'm not your flying sword, I just played with you because I was bored. Ling Yunpo. He turned to Kunlun Mirror and asked, Jin, it should be too late to throw this bitch back to the sword pool and exchange it for a proper flying sword? Of course. Kunlun Mirror said, and I strongly suggest that you do so. She is not an easy person to tame. Okay then. Ling Yunpo went out. Hey, wait a minute. Kingping Sword cried out, I was just joking. I've already pledged my love to you. How could I betray the Sword Master so easily? I'll give you another chance. Whose sword are you? Ling Yunpo asked coldly. It's yours, okay? Kingping Sword said coquettishly in a coaxing tone, Yo-Yo and I both belong to the Sword Master, don't drag me into this. Kunlun Mirror, who was watching the show, expressed dissatisfaction. Continue talking about the Taoism. Ling Yunpo interrupted them. As for Taoist magic, most of it you can't use yet. Kingping Sword pretended to hang for a while, how about you take this and play with it? This method is called green mist cover in the Kanshan Mountains, which transforms the water essence into a thick fog that spreads for thousands of miles. When the enemy is trapped in it, their 6 senses are closed, their bodies are sluggish, and the power of all non-water spells is greatly reduced. When activating it, you only need to chant the spell Misty and Misty, smoke floating in the mirage, you can recite it aloud or silently. Okay. Ling Yunpo nodded and said, I'll try it first. If it doesn't work, you can go back to the sword pond. No. Kingping Sword began to whimper, I don't want to leave Lord Sword Master, can't Lord Sword Master give me a little trust? As long as Lord Sword Master becomes stronger, I will provide more and better Taoist magic. Kingping. Ling Yunpo said coldly and ruthlessly, you must remember, you didn't choose me, but I chose you. It's not that the weak trust the strong and choose to follow him, but because the strong is superior to the weak, so the weak have to follow him. 2 weak followers will only be left far behind by the strong and cannot be followed. This is the same for both you and me. Kingping Sword. If you don't want to be unable to keep up with my pace, then work hard to become stronger. Ling Yunpo said at last and walked out. Yo-Yo, I'm beginning to like him. Kingping Sword did not answer, but avoided Ling Yunpo's consciousness and whispered to Kunlun Mirror, what should I do? This is the first time I have met such an interesting sword master. Are you going to transform into a human and fall in love with him? Kunlun Mirror asked. No, being a human is boring. It's more fun to be a sword. Kingping Sword shook his head and said. Ling Yunpo ignored their complaints and just left the Taoist temple directly, came to the open space outside, and raised his sword with one hand. The consciousness and the sword spirit communicated, and the Kingping Sword was suspended in the air, trembling slightly. The mist is hazy, and the mirage is floating in the smoke. Ling Yunpo recited loudly. In an instant, boundless fog emerged from nowhere and instantly covered the surrounding open space. Ling Yunpo glanced around and found that everything he saw was white, like endless snowflakes on an old-fashioned TV screen that could not receive a signal. He could not see anything when he stretched out his hand, and could not hear any sound when he tilted his ears. The thick fog seemed to absorb all colors and sounds, leaving only pure and quiet white between heaven and earth. His body seemed to become heavy. Ling Yunpo looked down and found that his clothes had been soaked without knowing when. Water dripped along the corners of his clothes. Ling Yunpo tried to mobilize his spiritual consciousness and circulate his qi, but found that his spiritual consciousness was blocked less than half a meter away from his body, and the circulation of his true qi became stagnant. He connected his qi to the Kingping sword, and the weight on his body suddenly lightened, and his spiritual consciousness spread along the fog without hindrance. In this thick fog, every tiny drop of water can become a part of his extended consciousness. Ling Yunpo stopped the circulation of his true qi, removed the surrounding fog, put away the Kingping sword, found a place to sit under the shade of a tree, and began to wait for Senior Sisterin to return from outside. At the same time, he was also thinking about how to use this sword method to build a flexible combat system. For example, when fighting with fellow disciples from Shushan, the fog rose to cover the opponent's perception, and then the Kingping sword was used to perform a fair backstab. Well, the idea is still a bit conservative. Since the thick fog suppresses the opponent's consciousness, the opponent will definitely withdraw the flying sword to his side and be ready. For example, I bring two swords, deliberately throw the flying sword at the opponent from the front, and at the same time control the Kingping sword to stack from behind. If the enemy reacts quickly enough and blocks the frontal sword throw, he will definitely miss the backstab from behind. Just thinking about this, Ling Yunpo suddenly raised his head and saw a strange short and fat boy pressing down the sword light and descending on King Luo Peak. Ling Yunpo, junior brother Lin. The other party looked over. That's right, may I know who you are? Ling Yunpo asked with a bow. Loses him. The short and fat boy turned his eyes and fell on the Kingping sword behind him. Wow. This man's eyes are so disgusting. The Kingping sword yelled in his mind, hide me quickly. I don't want him to see me. Is Senior Sisterin here? Loses asked for confirmation. She's out. Ling Yunpo said indifferently, Senior brother, you can go in and sit for a while until Senior Sister comes back. No need. Loses raised his chin and sneered in a defiant and somewhat regretful tone. Junior brother Lin, do you know? You're in big trouble. Chapter 27 Jewel Boy. Ling Yunpo was puzzled. Brother Lu, I wonder how this disaster came to be. Lu Zixing smiled slightly. Brother Lin, do you know that your master who is in seclusion was seriously injured and returned to the mounting, and he was in the life and death gate? Ling Yunpo's pupils shrank slightly. In fact, Qishazhen and Su Jian had been in seclusion for so long, and he probably guessed some clues, but he never thought that he was really in the death gate because of a serious injury. The so-called life and death gate is to seal it with the highest cultivation before the seclusion. Because it is easy to seal the gate but difficult to break it under the same skill, you must break through the next level and increase your cultivation significantly before you can break through the gate. The restrictions of doing so are too great, resulting in only those who are about to die and have to gamble everything, or those who are seriously injured and dying and need to use the secret method of tortoise breathing to survive, will choose to use the life and death gate to seal themselves. To put it bluntly, it is a life and death. Not to mention when to come out of the seclusion, it is unknown whether you can come out alive. Junior brother Lin, you were so careless when you became a disciple at King Luo Peak. Didn't you ask other senior brothers and sisters in advance? Lu Zixing said with great sorrow, everyone in Shushan knows that Su Jian was seriously injured that year. If he hadn't gone into seclusion, he would have died immediately. According to the concept of Yuning cultivators, such injuries must be recovered through seclusion for at least a few hundred years. Which key training cultivator can wait so long? If you can't achieve golden elixir, your lifespan will be no more than 200 years. By the time your master comes out of seclusion, you will have turned into a pile of bones. Ling Yun broke the silence for a moment and said, thank you for your reminder, senior brother, but, listen to me. Lu Zixing interrupted him and said earnestly, Junior brother Lin, you have not been practicing Taoism for long, and you don't know the hardships involved. The path of cultivation for a sword immortal is full of difficulties and obstacles. Without guidance, it is almost impossible to make any progress in cultivation. I'm not exaggerating. Think about it, who can teach you when your mental skills become obscure? Who can enlighten you when your sword skills become ineffective? Even if you have a great adventure and successfully cleanse your marrow and transform your body, who can protect you and resist the final golden elixir tribulation? Ling Yunpo was speechless. He couldn't tell Lu Zizhang that he didn't need to worry about this matter. Qiu Changtai worshipped Ziwi's headmaster as his master in cunning, so there would be someone to take care of his Taoist skills, mental skills, sword skills and golden elixir tribulation. Seeing that he was speechless, Lu Zizhang thought that he had been persuaded, and continued to incite him with saliva flying. Look at your senior sister Anne, she was a disciple secretly adopted by Su Jian outside, and she was at the waffle level when she returned to the mountain. Half a decade has passed, has your cultivation level improved at all? Go ask other senior brothers and junior brothers, who would dare to enter King Luo Peak as a casual cultivator if they knew the pros and cons? Only senior sister Anne, who regards elder Su Jian as her father, would rather work hard for many years and barely maintain King Luo Peak than change to another master. We in Ziyun Peak can't bear to watch you ruin your future, so master asked the headmaster to allow you another chance to choose. When you enter our peak, you will practice hard for a decade under the guidance of master, and you may have surpassed senior sister and entered the Jindan realm in advance. Ling Yun broke the silence and listened, and probably understood what was going on. Oh, the headhunter came to poach. What he said is indeed true. Everything else is good at King Luo Peak, but the fact that there is no master is really hurtful. Cultivating here is basically no different from practicing casually. If it were a normal Shushan Ling Yunpo, then although senior sister is as gentle as water and has been considerate and caring to him since he joined the sect, but after all, it involves the longevity of the Great Dao. Sorry, I have to leave now. I wish you a happy life in the future. Goodbye. However, it is a coincidence that Ling Yunpo is not an ordinary person, but an undercover agent who wants to infiltrate the upper echelons of the sect. The key to being an undercover agent is that he cannot be suspected of being a traitor. If he betrays his master and goes to another place shortly after joining the sect, even if the master of Ziyun Peak is willing to take him in, how will the brothers and sisters of Ziyun Peak view him? Look, that Ling Yunpo is the guy who betrayed King Luo Peak before. With such a criminal record, it means that he has no loyalty at all. It is not impossible for him to betray Ziyun Peak in the future. How can he survive in the future? For others, whether to trade a good reputation for a better training environment might be a choice worth careful consideration. But for Ling Yunpo, there is no need to think about it. After Lu Zizhang finished speaking, Ling Yunpo showed a determined expression and said in a deep voice, "Thank you for Ziyun Peak's kindness. However, I have entered King Luo Peak and worshipped Master Su Jian as my teacher. Teacher for a day, teacher for life, how can I betray easily? I, Ling Yunpo, am not such a disloyal and unrighteous person. Even if there are thousands of dangers and difficulties in the future, I will bear them all. Unyielding character, synchronization value +1. He spoke in an impassioned tone, and heard senior sister and behind him excitedly shouting, "Junior brother!" Ling Yunpo turned around and saw Nzisu running out of the back gate, hugging his arms excitedly. As early as when Lu Zizhang said, "Your master is in the gate of life and death," she happened to fly back to King Luo Peak from the back. Seeing her junior brother talking to a strange boy in front of the Taoist temple, she quietly hid behind the main gate and listened. Hearing Lu Zizhang say who dares to enter King Luo Peak as a casual cultivator, Nzisu's face was cold at first, then she remained silent, and finally her expression dimmed. Without the guidance of the master, this is the biggest flaw of King Luo Peak itself. As long as the opponent sticks to this point, it will be invincible. Therefore, in all these years, except Ling Yunpo, King Luo Peak has not received a single disciple, and it has become more and more dilapidated. I remember that before the master closed the gate of death, he once told her, "Sua, King Luo Peak is handed over to you." She didn't know the pros and cons at the time, but just agreed naively. Then she experienced the ups and downs of life, being looked down upon by others. Her cultivation had reached a bottleneck and stagnated for many years, being ridiculed and despised by others. Even now her monthly salary was deducted, and she didn't even have enough spiritual stones for cultivation. No matter how lonely and helpless she was, she still remembered her master's instructions, and her voice was as if it was in her ears, so she always relied on herself and refused to admit defeat. When her monthly salary was deducted, she went to the political affairs hall to argue. When someone broke into King Luo Peak to provoke her, she picked up her sword and beat the other person so that he couldn't take care of himself. Anyway, according to the rules of the sect, Jindan Senran was not allowed to take action against disciples in the foundation building period, so she practiced the art of controlling the sword day and night, and now she has become the best person onto the Jindan stage. This King Luo Peak lineage was barely maintained with her efforts. The only thing was recruiting disciples. After all, the current situation of King Luo Peak was here, and it was not easy to ask others to sacrifice their own path and force them to stay in King Luo Peak, so she never recruited junior brothers and sisters. Because of this, when Ling Yunpo joined King Luo Peak, she showed him all kinds of care and love, treating him like her own brother. Now that junior brother Ling had actually refused Ziyun Peak's recruitment for her sake, and what he had just said was full of emotion, and his expression did not seem fake, she felt warm in her heart and said softly, "Junior brother, are you serious?" "Of course," Ling Yunpo said resolutely. Unyielding personality, synchronization value +1. Zisu's eyes became more gentle, and she asked again. "In the future, Master may have to go into seclusion and have no time to come out to guide our cultivation. Everything must be self-reliant. Can you accept this?" Ling Yunpo said sternly. "Without Master, what's the problem? In the future, senior sister and I will support each other and keep King Luo Peak going." Unyielding personality, synchronization value +1. The synchronization rate of this unyielding personality is a bit difficult to increase. Junior brother, Zisu was deeply moved, and his eyes were immediately filled with tears. He bit his lower lip and could not speak. Lu Zizhen, who was opposite him, had already been stunned by what he heard. After a long while, he came back to his senses. He waved his sleeves angrily and shouted, "You're stubborn. In this case, I, Ziyun Peak, don't have to show any mercy." After saying that, he threw down a sword talisman and rode away with the sword light. Zisu was quick-witted and turned the frost sword into a stream of light. He rolled it back before the sword talisman fell to the ground. When he saw the words on it, his face changed immediately. It was written on it, "Shushan Law Hall approves Ziyun Peak disciple Lu Zizhen to challenge King Luo Peak disciple Ling Yunpo to a sword duel under the witness of the deacon." Chapter 28. Improving Senior Sister's Favorability. After Lu Zizhen left, Ling Yunpo heard Sister and talk about the old things, and then he knew that Ziyun Peak and King Luo Peak had an old grudge. To be precise, it was Elder Mingwu, the head of Ziyun Peak, who had an old grudge with Master Su Jian. It is said that Master was a notorious ruthless person in the past. When he was mad, even the head of the sect had to give up 3 points. He was also ruthless in the fight. When challenging others, he never held back, and almost always ended by chopping off the opponent's natal sword. Such ruthless behavior will naturally provoke hatred, so there are many sword immortals who came to him with swords to seek revenge because their senior brothers and sisters, junior brothers and sisters were chopped off by Su Jian, and their cultivation was greatly damaged. Then they were killed. He took the initiative to challenge the sword of others, and kill people directly when challenged. In this way, the reputation of Qishan spread in Shushan, and there was even a saying of the first sword in Shushan. Well, if you have the ability to kill all other sword immortals, you are the first sword in Shushan, which is reasonable. In addition, many Shushan swordsmen had unruly personalities. When they heard of this fierce reputation, most of them did not believe it and wanted to take up their swords to test it. As a result, they were killed after the test. For a time, Shushan almost lost its talents, forcing the headmaster to change the rules of the sect. Fighting must be approved by the criminal law hall in advance, and can only be carried out after applying for a sword talisman. Private sword fighting is not allowed. Violators will be punished with felonies. Since approval is required, there is a review process. As long as the challenger is found to be Su Jian, they will delay the approval and report to the headmaster secretly. The headmaster quickly found an opportunity to issue a sect mission to the challenger and send him out. Relying on this delaying process plus disguised exile, the hatred of Su Jian from Shushan was eliminated at the time. Later, when Su Jian went out of the mountain to pick up Nzesu, he was ambushed by the elder of the Shirdo of the demon sect, and was seriously injured and dying. He returned to King Luo Peak and hurriedly went into seclusion. Seeing that this fierce man would not come out, the headmaster transferred those who had been sent out back to Shushan in batches. These people all had hatred towards Su Jian. Although they had calmed down during their exile and no longer thought about challenging Su Jian to commit suicide, they did not hide their hatred towards King Luo Peak. As a result, the situation at King Luo Peak became worse and worse. Hearing this, Ling Yunpo was also at a loss whether to laugh or cry. My goodness, it turned out that it was the chief master who was in seclusion who made up the hatred. As for Elder Ming, his natal sword was chopped off by our master during a sword duel, which greatly damaged his cultivation. He only changed to a better flying sword later and didn't think about seeking revenge on our master, but the grudge still exists. Zisu tucked the hair hanging on her cheek behind her ear and continued, if I'm guessing correctly, Ziyun Peak must have taken a fancy to your flying sword. They have quite a good eye. Ling Yunpo said seriously, I have confirmed that this sword is the Kingping sword of the ancient Jiao. It is undoubtedly a 10th rank immortal sword. That's it. Zisu didn't ask him how he confirmed it, but just sighed and said, otherwise, they wouldn't have come so early or so late, but would have to come to attack you after you went to the sword pool to get the sword. Junior brother, don't worry, you don't have to pay attention to this sword duel challenge, I will collect the fine spirit stones. No, senior sister. Ling Yunpo said hurriedly, it's only a thief who steals for 1,000 days, how can you be on guard against thieves for 1,000 days? We rejected the sword fighting challenge this time by paying a fine of spirit stones. What should we do if Ziyun Peak finds someone else to challenge me again? We in King Luo Peak don't have that many spirit stones to pay. That's what you say. Zisu still frowned, but junior brother, do you know? The Ziyun Peak lineage has a secret method of gathering purple key at the top of the head. At the cost of 3 years of sluggishness and no progress in cultivation, your strength can be increased by 1 level in a short period of time. She said worriedly. After our Shushan sword immortals enter the marrow washing stage, they can practice the method of nurturing the sword with the body. Usually, you can hide the flying sword in your body and nourish it with blood key to improve its quality. In battle, you can also perform man-sword unity to greatly increase the impact and lethality of the flying sword. If losers used the secret method to force the marrow washing before the duel, your chances of winning would be slim. Senior sister. Ling Yunpo said passionately, if it was someone else who challenged me, they might be afraid, but I, Ling Yunpo, am not afraid. Unyielding character, synchronization value +1. The so-called sword immortal must cut off life and death, only then can he achieve the great do. If even a clown who plays tricks has to retreat and protect himself, what can he do when he encounters 3 disasters and 9 calamities in the future? He said righteously, and only heard Kumlin Jing say numbly. Unyielding character, synchronization value +1. Junior brother. Zisu bit her lower lip, tears welling up in her eyes. How could she not understand the principle of hitting 1 punch to prevent 100 punches? That's how she got through it back then. However, the one who wanted to challenge me this time was not her, but her junior brother with a straightforward character and stubborn will. How could she watch her junior brother go to his death? Senior sister. Ling Yunpo wiped the tears from her cheeks carefully and smiled resolutely, if you're really worried about me, please teach me more swordsmanship. As for how to defeat the sword fairy of the marrow cleansing stage, I will ask the head of Kunlun Ziwia, Hilhi. In conjunction with the words of sacrificing one's life for justice, Ling Yunpo's face also showed a look of fearless and desperate, which made Zisu choke up again. Junior brother, seeing that this naive senior sister was completely confused by Ling Yunpo's disguised unyielding personality and even shed tears for it, Kunlun Mirror was inexplicably angry. It quietly opened a small hole in the mirror again. While weakening the temperament of the unyielding personality, it also let his true temperament reveal itself. Remove the mental suggestion again. Zisu. What? Junior brother seemed to have suddenly become a different person just now. If Ling Yunpo before gave her the impression of a determined young man who will fight to the death even though he knows he will face danger, then just now, although it was only a moment, his temperament seemed to be shrewd, well prepared, not panicked at all. Well, could it be that junior brother actually has a plan in mind, but is just not convenient to say it out? Oh, really, junior brother Lin, is there any plan that can't be discussed with senior sister? Thinking of this, Zisu was a little puzzled. However, she was extremely gentle and protective of her family after all. Since junior brother was unwilling to speak out, she certainly would not deliberately expose him. She wiped away her tears, nodded and smiled. Well, senior sister will teach you. Whether it is the two-handed sword control technique or other sword techniques, as long as senior sister knows it, I will teach you. Looking at the deep brother-sister relationship between the two, Kumlin Jim couldn't help but fall into a long period of thought. Originally, he just couldn't bear to see Zisu being deceived so pitifully, so he quietly removed Ling Yunpo's disguise, wanting her to get to know his true face. Why did it seem that Zisu's favorability towards him increased? Chapter 29. Lightning King Qiu Chang's Iron. After rejecting Ziyun Peak's recruitment and accepting Lu Zixing's duel, Ling Yunpo's relationship with his senior sister is rapidly heating up. In the morning, he was awakened from his meditation by his senior sister, and then he practiced swords intensively, in the afternoon, and in the evening. It was like a dream back to the days of doing questions every day in the college entrance examination in his previous life. Fortunately, senior sister Am's pretty appearance of holding a sword in red sleeves was really charming, and it was not so boring that it was unbearable. After learning the general sword moves of the 7-killing sword art, Ling Yunpo began to learn the two-handed sword controlling technique. The two-handed sword controlling technique currently circulated within Shushan is based on the natal sword weapon, plus an auxiliary sword, and the two swords must attack and defend together, and cannot be separated. However, after Su Jian's improvement, the two-handed sword controlling technique of the 7-killing sword art school is truly a dual-purpose sword controlling technique. The two swords can attack and defend together, or one attack and one defend, each taking a different sword path. Just like a single-core CPU suddenly becomes a dual-core CPU, and the combat capability is naturally greatly enhanced. In order to control the sword with both hands at the same time, the two arms need to take different routes for ki circulation. Since Ling Yunpo has not reached the stage of washing marrow, he has tried many times but failed to get started. Zisu was also worried, so he planned to find someone to teach him in this regard. Let's not talk about Ling Yunpo for now. Anyway, there is still some time before the day of the sword duel. It's just the right time to read the file to Qiu Chang Tian, and then ask the head of Ziwei for the trump card. In Kunlun Tai King sect, after today's lecture, everyone left the lecture room one after another. Qiu Chang Tian sat still on the futon. Zhu Yingyan was about to get up, but seeing this, he continued to sit on his right. What's the matter? After everyone else left, the head of Ziwei asked with his eyes closed. Report to the master. Qiu Chang Tian said respectfully, the day before yesterday, I encountered a Immortal Cultivator of the marrow washing stage while training outside. If the master hadn't given me the chia-splitting light sword to save my life, I would have met with an accident. I want to ask the master, if there is no chia-splitting light sword, what should I do against an enemy of the marrow washing stage? Zhu Yinlian, who was standing next to him, was stunned. Senior brother has such great ambitions. At the mere ki refining stage, he is already looking for a way to defeat an enemy of the marrow washing stage. Upon hearing this, the head of Ziwei sect did not answer immediately, but just pondered for a moment, suddenly opened his eyes and asked, You have made an appointment to fight with someone. How could he guess this? Qiu Chang Tian was shocked in his heart, and denied it, saying, I was just thinking about what happened the day before yesterday, and I was frightened and scared. Humph. The head of Ziwei sect snorted coldly, and did not expose him, but turned to look at Zhu Yinlian and said, Yinlian, you go home first. Well. Zhu Yinlian got up and left. As soon as the junior sister left, only the master and the disciple were left in the lecture room. Qiu Chang Tian looked towards his master, only to see that the headmaster Ziwei waved his whisk and said in a clear voice, I am the 280th generation disciple Qiu Chang Tian. Now I will teach you the method of howling wind and thunder. The great dough is above, so just listen carefully. His voice was deafening, like spring thunder bursting on the tip of your tongue. Qiu Chang Tian subconsciously sat upright, feeling cold sweat on his back and cigarette smoke curling in front of his eyes. He could not see anything gradually, as if his whole body was in a small universe isolated from the world. Only the headmaster's chanting echoed in his ears. Thunder is the pivot of heaven and earth. The pivot of heaven and earth is called the two pivots, located in the east and west, and it controls the 72 departments of thunder. Yang thunder and yin lightning, the pivot is yin and the pivot is yang, thunder is good and thunder is evil. Thunder is good at generating vitality, and thunder is evil at generating evil. When vitality and evil are combined, there is a strong force of exploding. The wonderful thunder is 3 in the east and 2 in the south, 1 in the north and 4 in the west, and 5 in the middle. When Ji returned to the center, after the sudden enlightenment, his consciousness sank rapidly, and he saw that everything around him was dim, with only a little starlight in the sea of Qi, flickering and swaying for a long time. In a moment, the light and fire started, gradually burning all over the body, but it did not feel hot and unbearable, just like bathing in warm water, with warm hands and feet. After a while, the chanting stopped, and the fire on the body quickly dissipated. In a trance, someone patted his cheek. Open your mouth. Qiu Chang Tian subconsciously opened his mouth, and the headmaster took out a pill bottle from his sleeve, took out a pill, and put it under his tongue. The pill melted in his mouth, turned into a hot stream, entered from the throat, went to the mountain, fell into the sea of ki, mixed and formed a ball of purple gold light, suspended in the sea of ki, flickering. Qiu Changtai woke up slowly, and saw the headmaster threw the pill bottle into his arms, closed his eyes and said, "This is a thunder seed. Take one pill every 3 days, for 9 consecutive days, to consolidate your realm. Go to the Sutra Pavilion and get the Shengxiao Yushu Zankan Woilai and study it carefully. I don't care whether you're fighting or protecting yourself, you must do it perfectly, and don't let my reputation as Ziwi's run down." Qiu Changtai was silent for a moment, and bowed to thank him. After leaving the lecture room, Qiu Changtai immediately went to the Sutra Pavilion to get the scripture that the headmaster had mentioned. The elder who looked after the Sutra library was surnamed Zhu, said to be from the Zhu family of Tianan. She was an old lady with a neat and lean appearance, and she knew almost all the hundreds of thousands of sutras in the Sutra library. Hearing the name of Shengxiao Yushu Zankan Woilai Difa, Elder Zhu looked at Qiu Changtai suspiciously and asked curiously, "What do you want to do with the thunder method? That thing is not easy to practice." "Excuse me, senior, why do you say it is not easy to practice?" Qiu Changtai asked respectfully. "The main reason is that it is too difficult to practice. Elder Zhu explained in detail, thunder is the pivot of heaven and earth, the command of heaven, and the most murderous aura. Thunder has evil spirits, which is specifically used to break evil and filth, and has great power against magic. And it is in this position, which can break armor and open it up, and flying swords and magic weapons are difficult to resist. It is so powerful that it can easily hurt others and yourself. If you are not careful during practice, you'll hurt your body and wither and die. Or your temperament will change drastically, and you will become irritable and easily angered." At this point, she paused to think for a moment, and then said, "You have a physique with a clear mind of Taoism, so the risk of practicing thunder magic is much smaller. If you can get the innate thunder crystal as a thunder seed, you'll get twice the result with half the effort. However, because there have been too few people practicing it in the past, most of the thunder magic spells have been lost. Isn't it a joke to take the risk and work hard to practice the general outline of thunder magic, but in the end there are no corresponding spells to use? Even in our Kunlun Tai King sect, we now only have one volume of Shengxiao Yushu's and Woilai Difa, which can be used to cultivate Yushu thunder. If you have this much skill, you might as well practice the complete spells of other sects." She talked on, and seeing Qiu Changtai standing by her side with his hands behind his back, respectfully silent, she suddenly came to her senses and said with an apologetic smile, "What am I talking about? Since you have designated the volume of Yushu Thunder, I think you have made up your mind a long time ago. Why do I need to interfere?" Taking out a thin book from a bookcase somewhere, Elder Zhu handed it to Qiu Changtai and said, "This is the Yushu Thunder you wanted. Be careful when practicing it." "Thank you, Elder Zhu." Qiu Changtai bowed to express his gratitude. "You're welcome. I'll have to trouble you to take care of Yinlian, the child, in the future." Elder Zhu said kindly, "Well, as a gift for you to become a Taoist couple." She pondered for a moment, then took out a pen and ink from the side and wrote him a note. "In addition to Yushu Lady, our Sutra library originally had the scroll of Shengxiao Lady, but it disappeared 600 years ago. I checked the records here and found that the successor of the Shengxiao Lady method was Chonghe's Henren 600 years ago. The last record of him leaving the mountain was to go to Yangzhou Qji, and he never returned to the sect after that. If you have time in the future, you can go to Yangzhou to look for it." Chapter 30. My junior sister and I have a telepathic connection. Kunlun Mountains, Jinlan Cave. Senior brother Qiu Changtai seems to be in a good mood recently. Even Guanzhen, who was always cold and aloof, stopped him for the first time when they met at the cave gate this morning and said a few more words to encourage him to practice. Chenxin and Thong Tianhua, two close friends, hid and whispered while he was preaching. He did not give a wake-up call as usual, but just smiled, which made the two junior brothers feel uneasy. Could it be that senior brother has fallen into a love barrier? Chenxin speculated privately. It's hard to say. Thong Tianhua said in an ambiguous tone, "Isn't it rumored that senior brother likes second senior sister?" "Love barrier?" Yuanzhen said coldly beside him, "Senior brother is a person with a clear mind of Taoism, what kind of love barrier can he have?" The two were embarrassed when they heard this. However, the rumor that Qiu Changtai and Zhu Yinglian are close is indeed spread widely among the current generation of Kunlun disciples. After all, for most Kunlun disciples, Qiu Changtai's image is too perfect. He is handsome, talented, good-tempered, powerful, and has a high status. There is no flaw in him. It is said that although he is the chief disciple, he will go out from time to time to gain experience and help other Kunlun disciples with their tasks. When people ask him why he helps, he says we are both from cunning, so we help each other out of righteousness, which moves everyone. It's so damn great and glorious. Qiu Changtian has such a high reputation. Among the disciples of this generation, I'm afraid that only Zhu Yingyang can barely match him. This Phoenix Fairy is also very beautiful, with outstanding qualifications, excellent temperament, and not bad strength. She is also from a great family of Immortal Cultivation, the Tian and Zhu family, with a terrifyingly deep background. Even so, she is still not as good as senior brother Qiu. However, if you want to say who in Kunling can match senior brother, I'm afraid it is only Zhu Yingyang. And if you want to say who Zhu Yingyang can fall in love with, it can only be senior brother. Isn't that the end? Judging from the gossip tastes of the Kunlun people, Qiu Changtian and Zhu Yingyang are a perfect match. There are even rumors that the two have secretly made an engagement and become Taoist couples, but there has never been any solid evidence. Thinking of this, Chen Xin and Thong Tianhua looked at Zhu Yingyang leisurely. The latter just finished his comprehension, stood up, and said lightly, "It's not me." "Hey, we didn't say it was you, how can you take it for granted?" The two looked at each other and suddenly felt that there was something strange, so they reached out to hold Jian Qingnan, who was about to leave with Zhu Yingyang, and asked with a wink, "Junior sister, you see that senior brother is in a good mood uncharacteristically recently. Did something happen, huh? With your second senior sister, do you know?" "With sister Yingyang? I don't know." Jian Qingnan was a little confused at first, but then she reacted and said, "I'm not the kind of person who gossips about others behind their backs. Don't ask me, ask senior brother. I'm just afraid that senior brother and your second senior sister will be embarrassed." Chen Xin said anxiously, "People who are in love are always confused and distant. Maybe they have some feelings for each other, but it would be bad if we asked this question and it was exposed." "Hehe, how do you know so much?" Jian Qingnan stared at him and sneered. After a while, she held her chin and said, "If you say that there is something ambiguous between the two, I really can't see it. But they often play that piano and flute in front of the cave, and it seems that they have a tacit understanding. Playing the piano and flute together." Thong Tianhua and Chen Xin were surprised. This music is beyond their understanding. What song is it playing? Fen Qiuang. What? You want to join in too? Qiu Changtian's voice sounded from behind. The two are immediately frightened and turned around, stammering, Big brother, we just don't care about these romantic things in normal times, and spend more time on improving yourself and glorifying the sect." Qiu Changtian said seriously, in a serious tone, "If you have nothing to do after practicing, come with me to go out for training." This. The two hurriedly found an excuse and slipped away. What a joke, who wants to go out for training? What can you get from going out for training? Spiritual stones. Not to mention that everyone is a second-generation immortal, even without the support of their families, just relying on the status of direct disciple of the master. When have they ever lacked spiritual stones for cultivation? Chen Xin and Thong Tianhua fled in panic, and Qiu Changtian looked at the others. "I still have sword-controlling skills to practice," Yuanzhen said concisely and left quickly. "I also have a scripture to read." Yan Zichui also smiled and stood up. Jian Qingnan was a little reluctant to leave Sister Yinlin, but finally said honestly, "Brother Qiu, wiki refining disciples can only do some low-level tasks when we go out for training. And these low-level tasks only have some spirit stones as rewards, which are of no use to us. Qingnan, you're short-sighted." Qiu Changtian said earnestly, "Don't always focus on the rewards. The so-called training is the process of cleansing the world and sharpening the heart of Tao. On the one hand, it increases knowledge and experience, and on the other hand, it helps fellow disciples and accumulates human resources. Why not do it?" Jian Qingnan couldn't refute this great truth, and of course it was impossible to be convinced. She could only stammer, "Brother, you're right, but I still have homework to do. I will definitely do it next time. She ran away in a hurry. Qiu Changtian sighed in his heart. The world is really going downhill, and people's hearts are not as good as they used to be. Are all the young disciples nowadays so calculative? Why can't we have a higher ideological awareness? Kunlun Mirror suddenly said. If you didn't want to rely on those outer disciples who worship you to brush up the synchronization value of the invincible character, would you be so active in going out for training? Of course. Qiu Changhan said righteously, don't forget, senior sister in Shushan is still short of spiritual stones. Kunlun mirror. Junior sisters are you willing to go with me this time? Qiu Changhan invited Zhu Yingyan. What is the meaning of going out for training? Zhu Yingyan put down the scriptures in his hand and asked lightly. It depends on you to comprehend it yourself. Qiu Changhan said with a smile, if you think you can't understand the deep meaning, you can choose not to go. Ha ha. Zhu Yingyan immediately sneered, brother, are you trying to provoke me? What a poor technique. Provoke me. Qiu Changhan looked disappointed and sighed, junior sister, you didn't even figure out why I wanted to take you there, but you blindly judged that I was provoking you. Don't you think such a guess is like a castle in the air and has no persuasive power? If your understanding is only this level, then I would rather you stay here. There was a loud bang, but Zhu Yingyan slammed the scripture in his hand heavily on the table, interrupting Qiu Changhan's words of pity. Brother Qiu. Zhu Yingyan maintained a cold and polite smile, and said word by word, I heard that you have practiced a thunder method recently. I would like to see it. Is it convenient? I'm just taking this opportunity to show you a demonstration. Qiu Changhan said gently when he saw that the other party agreed. The two of them said no more, but just smiled at each other. Their eyes conveyed their feelings, their minds were connected, and everything was said without words. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Mundo Fanfic Novelers, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelers. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 31. Please become a Taoist couple soon. A few hours later, Zhu Yingyan regretted it at the speed of light. Where did so many liquors come from? The training mission that Qiu Changhan took this time was that a Kunlun outer sect disciple accidentally discovered the entrance to a suspected earth vein on the west side of Longshan. The so-called earth vein is a branch of the dragon vein of Jiuzhou. It is usually a place with majestic spiritual energy and a suitable place for cultivation. There are more ancient monks who have built small houses. The benefits of the relics are self-evident, but they may also be full of organs and occupied by monsters and beasts. The risks and benefits are equal. The earth veins here are not very spiritual. Even if there are ancient relics, most of them are only for the benefit of foundation-building disciples. Jindan Zhenron is unwilling to come. The Kunlun disciple who invited Qiu Changhan was a little worried, fearing that the chief would worry about the risks and benefits and put up a shelf and refuse to come. As a result, when he received the reply to the message, he immediately burst into tears and praised the chief for his righteousness. When Qiu Changhan and Zhu Yingyan arrived on their swords, more than a dozen Kunlun disciples came up to surround them, respectfully calling them big brother and second sister to make themselves familiar. Zhu Yingyan was impatient to deal with these lickers, so he just nodded coldly. Qiu Changhan was not arrogant at all. He nodded and greeted everyone one by one. His expression and tone were as warm as the spring breeze, making everyone feel close and not cold. Suddenly, everyone's good impression of him increased. Invincible character, synchronization value +1. Kunlun Jing said indifferently. As the synchronization value rises, the aptitude of Taoism can also be stably exerted at 100%. During this period of time, the cultivation is ridiculously strong, which can be called an upgrade accelerator. Big brother, please look, this is the entrance to the earth vein. The disciple who took on the task this time was called Yuan Tianbao, and he took the responsibility of leading the way. Qiu Changhan looked carefully and found that there was indeed a small opening behind that vines in the concave part of the rock leading to the inside. The spiritual energy here is very weak, and it is rare to be able to detect it. Qiu Changhan smiled gently, it's just that it is so hidden, there may not be any remains of cultivators inside, maybe it's just an empty natural vein. Everyone should be mentally prepared for this trip. That's natural. If there are really no ancient relics, we will report to the sect and exchange the location here for spiritual stones. In short, the share of the eldest brother will definitely be indispensable. Everyone said in unison. That's not necessary. I came here this time to ensure your safety. If it is really an empty vein and there is no way to help, I will not accept spiritual stones. Qiu Changhan laughed loudly, raised his hand and cast a universal clear sound small light technique to dispel the darkness in front, and then walked in first. Zhu Yingyan followed silently behind, thinking that the senior brother was really interesting. He always pretended to be such a gentle and elegant attitude to the outside world. Who knew that his nature was not like this at all? He really should use the photo stone to record his words that made him angry, so that these licking dogs can listen carefully. Everyone followed closely behind him. The cave path was winding and difficult to walk on. There was moss attached to it, making it slippery and unstable. After walking down more than 200 meters, the front was still dark. The disciples who had not yet washed their marrow kept climbing down. They were already exhausted and panting, and they cast their eyes on the tall figure of the senior brother in front of them. With so many people begging silently, Qiu Changtian had to hold Zhu Yingyan, who wanted to continue moving forward, and signaled to stop and let everyone rest. The air in the cave was humid, deep and dark, and there were echoes. The longer they stayed, the more gloomy and terrifying it became. Many disciples had the idea of retreating and did not dare to go deeper, so they asked Juan Tianbao to speak for them. However, facing Qiu Changtian's warm smile, Juan Tianbao could not say anything, and went back with an angry voice. If you want to leave, leave the team by yourself, don't drag the chief senior brother to make a wasted trip. Everyone looked at each other and was speechless for a while. After resting for a while, they continued on their way. After walking down for hundreds of meters, we finally saw the light. It was the night shining pearl inlaid on the wall. The road ahead had unknowingly changed from a natural cave to a square underground palace corridor. Seeing the blue brick and grey wall, everyone was half excited and half scared. The excitement was that this place was indeed not an empty land vein, but was occupied by a cultivator. The fear was that the blue brick and grey wall, why did it look so evil and cold and weird? Qiu Changtian looked at it coldly and twisted it through the cracks in the wall. Well, there were rashes mixed in it. Others couldn't see it. Luo Yan had studied a New King temple for so long, how could he not recognize this kind of evil cult refining technique? Judging from this style, it seems to be the refining style of the early Enkidu shortly after the split of the ancient Jirizhao. It seems that this underground palace must be related to the ancient Yinggido. But again, in terms of this kind of land vein aura, the ancient cultivators who occupied this place would not be very powerful. Qiu Changtian silently counted his own spells and found that both the Jade Smoke Sword and the Jade Pivot Thunder hit some restraint on the ghosts, so he asked everyone to continue moving forward. The deeper they went, the colder the temperature became, and from time to time there were strange rustling sounds. After a while, a shadow suddenly pounced in the darkness, and its momentum was very fast. Before the Kunlun disciples could react, Qiu Changtian quickly raised his hand, emitting a stream of jade light, nailing the shadow to the wall, and calmly reminded, "This is a low-level corpse spider, everyone be careful." Hearing the warning from the eldest brother, everyone also took out their flying swords and concentrated on their guard. Qiu Changtian raised his hand again, and the jade smoke sword flew back from the corpse. Everyone looked at the corpse spider corpse and was very excited. They thought that the eldest brother was indeed worthy at being the eldest brother, and even his swordsmanship was much more proficient than us, so they worshipped and admired him even more. Invincible character, synchronization value +1. Only Zhu Yingyan was somewhat unwilling. Her Yujie sword was even faster than the iron sword, but just now her reaction speed and attack speed was slower than her senior brother, and she lost completely. The team continued to move forward, clearing out the corpse spiders they encountered along the way. This seemed to be their nest. They killed more than 70 of them, but it seemed that they could not kill them all. Not long after, there were strange sounds from both sides, mournful and sad. It turned out that a large number of corpse spiders came from both ends and rushed towards the Kunlun disciples in the center. Qiu Changtian was not afraid of danger. He shouted loudly to wake up the stunned people and ordered them to form a formation to meet the enemy. There were more than a dozen disciples squatting or standing, divided into 3 rows and controlled the flying swords in turn, trying to repel the attacking corpse spiders. This corpse spider was also covered with hard hair and hit strong defenser. Ordinary flying swords could not penetrate it with one blow. It took 3 or 4 blows to kill one. In the few breaths of fighting, the defense line of the disciples was shaky and was almost broken through many times. On the other side, Qiu Changtian controlled the Jade Smoke Sword alone to kill the corpse spiders. The Jade Smoke Sword is a 7th level gold-type flying sword, and he also obtained the essence of the Shushan sword controlling art, so this flying sword can move freely and no spider can stop it. Basically, the golden light penetrates the body and kills it instantly. He fought with ease here. Seeing that the disciples in the back were unable to form a formation, he quickly asked Zhu Yingyan to go over for support. Zhu Yingyan was ordered by him, and immediately had the idea of competing. The Yu-Jie sword also flew faster and faster, shuttling back and forth in the group of corpse spiders. At that moment, the two of them used exquisite swordsmanship on both sides at the same time, blocking all the corpse spiders a few meters away. Invincible setting, synchronization value +1. Everyone was dumbfounded. This spider tied on one side alone was already beyond the ability of everyone to deal with, but senior brother Kyo and senior sisters Yu could defend alone and handle it with ease. Their strength was really unmatched. Look at Kyo Chang-tai riding the sword calmly and gracefully. Zhu Ying calmly takes a breath, with fluttering clothes. It makes the people around them feel ashamed. What a perfect couple of immortal heroes. Please become Taoist couples quickly, please. Chapter 32. If this kid is not eliminated, he will become a big trouble. When the spider corpses on both sides were piled up like a mountain, the remaining spider corpses knew they were no match for the enemy, so they wailed and retreated one after another. The Kunlun disciples breathed a sigh of relief. Some were sweating profusely, some were in disheveled clothes, and some were so exhausted that they simply sat down on the ground and stared at the spider corpses in a daze. In any case, this was the first battle for most of the Kunlun disciples present. The dark corridor and the endless spider tide left a lot of shadows for those who had just entered the world of cultivation. The powerful strength of senior brother Kyo and senior sisters Yu was also deeply imprinted in the hearts of everyone, and they would never mention it again. After a short rest, they continued to move forward. At this time, Kyo Chang-tai took the lead in clearing the way, and he almost became the spiritual pillar of the Kunlun disciples. They were all glad that they had invited this senior brother to come, otherwise everyone would really be destroyed in this dark underground. Invincible character, synchronization value +1. Zhu Ying walked silently beside him, feeling that something was wrong. Just now, when we were killing the corpse spiders, my senior brother and I were clearly evenly matched. Why does it seem that my senior brother has gained most of the reputation now? After walking a few hundred meters in the corridor, everyone entered a spacious place similar to a palace. This palace is an octagonal hall with 8 entrances on the wall. Everyone is coming in from one entrance. There is an irregular pit in the center, nearly 100 square meters, with countless stone coffins arranged in a mess, and various corpses surrounding it, with phosphorus lights and ghostly air. All the Kunlun disciples were pale when they saw it. This scene is clearly the remains of an ancient evil sect. No matter how powerful this evil sect relic is, we, the orthodox disciples, cannot use it, and we have to beware of the insidious forbidden attacks. It is really not worth it. Only the corpse of the corpse spider before has some value for practicing some Taoist methods to overcome evil and eliminate evil spirits, and it can be handed over to the sect in exchange for spirit stones. Thinking of this, all the disciples began to persuade the eldest brother in unison that there was such an evil ahead, and he must not go forward alone. It would be better to retreat and collect corpse spiders, and earn a little bit. Kyo Chang-tai saw it, and naturally understood everyone's thoughts. He pretended to ponder for a moment and nodded in agreement. Seeing that the eldest brother agreed, everyone breathed a sigh of relief and planned to turn back. Which evil is lying in wait? Kyo Chang-tai suddenly shouted, and the jade smoke sword was slightly raised, pointing directly at a cave in front. The Kunlun disciples were shocked and turned around to be on guard. I saw a group of monks slowly walking out of the darkness in the cave. Everyone was wrapped in black robes, with silver lines on the edges, ancient hairpins tied up their hair, and bone teeth buckled their shoulders. It was clear that they were all dressed as disciples of the leader, just like the last demon monk. The leader was a beautiful woman, with heavy makeup and gorgeous clothes. She stood lazily with her body half leaning, slowly opened her red lips, and uttered a deep and magnetic male voice. Who are you, fellow Taoist, trespassing into the ancient land of my leader? Kyo Chang-tai stared at him cautiously and said, We are disciples at Kunlun. This time we are only here to explore the earth veins. We happened to meet you and have no other intentions. Just a chance encounter. The androgynous guy opposite sneered slightly, gathered more than 10 people, broke into my underground palace, and still said you have no other intentions. If we hadn't arrived in time, I'm afraid these top-quality ancient corpses and remains in the pit would have been ruined by your orthodox disciples. Kyo Chang-tai said coldly, The ancient corpses and remains here do not belong to your leader, but are left over from ancient times. We are first come first served, and we have our own discretion in how to deal with them. What does it have to do with you? What a joke, this place is not ownerless, it is the ancient land of my leader, how can you people from Kunlun dare to set foot in it? The man narrowed his eyes, and suddenly thrust his fingers forward, chanting a spell in a hurry. Ghosts and demons, curse and kill the grievances. Jinoon fell like rain, and Yihong produced smoke. Qiu Chang's Time shouted loudly, and activated the Taoist magic on the Jade Smoke Sword, and also shot out countless lightsabers, which turned into a large net of light ropes in the air. From the sleeves of the man opposite, countless grey ghosts suddenly emerged and hit the light net fiercely. The broken light flashed, and the wronged souls cried. Qiu Chang's Time's expression changed, knowing that the other party was a marrow-washing demon cultivator, and immediately warned, "Retreat." Even if he used his trump card to wipe out these Yingadao disciples, who knew if it would attract more powerful enemies? Besides, these lovely junior brothers and sisters behind him were all brought up by him during this period of hard work in doing tasks, and they could skillfully help him brush the synchronization value of the invincible setting. If one of them died here, he would be heartbroken for a long time. As soon as the voice fell, the disciples of the Engido also raised their arms and pointed at this side from a distance, shouting in unison, "Ghosts and demons, curse and kill." This ghosts and demons sinister trick was obviously very powerful, and a single shot could defeat Qiu Chang's Time sword magic. At this time, several disciples attacked together. Qiu Chang's Time didn't have so many magics to block, so he stepped back quickly and raised his hand to point at the top of the wall above. Lightning and fire text, Jade Pivot Divine Thunder, break. This method is the Jade Pivot Thunder obtained by Qiu Chang's Time when he practiced the Shengxiao Jade Pivot Cutting and Exploding 5 Thunders Great method. Its light is green, and its inside is red. A ball of lightning the size of a palm shot out and exploded on the top wall of the corridor. The disciples of the Engido only felt the ground under their feet shaking violently, and it was almost difficult to keep their balance. Looking ahead, bricks and stones were flying everywhere, and smoke and dust filled the air, so that countless grey ghosts shot out were missing. When everyone dispersed the dust, they found that the corridor had been blown down and completely collapsed and blocked. "Brother Wen, what should we do?" the Engido disciples asked in unison. The androgynous guy frowned and uttered a word fiercely after a long while. "Chase." The Kunlun disciples here were running wildly along the way they came. The man who had seen fighting with the eldest brother before, and the English sect disciple who attacked behind, were all at the marrow-washing stage. There were a lot of key refining stages on their side, so they would definitely have no chance of winning if they fought. They could only run as fast as they could, and they didn't even care about the eldest brother who fell behind. Qiu Chang's Time was at the end of the team, and Zhu Yinglyan was beside him to support him, and whispered, "Do you have any strength left?" "Yes." "Brother's thunder method is quite powerful," Zhu Yinglyan commented. "Even if you used her Yujie sword to blow up the more than 10-meter-long collapse, it would not be so easy even if you used the sword magic." Qiu Chang's Time did not answer. After his true energy was restored, he raised his finger to the sky again and released a Jade Pivot Thunder, which once again collapsed the corridor behind. The disciples of the English sect over there used all kinds of magic to finally blast away the block rubble, but when they chased here and saw another collapse, they really vomited blood and cursed Kunlun bitch in their hearts. They had to start clearing the road again. The Kunlun people ran to the place where they had fought the corpse spiders before. Qiu Chang's Time raised his sleeves and shot out jade smoke, which wrapped up several corpse spiders and put them back into his sleeves. Taking advantage of the blockage he created, he could still delay the opponent for some time, just in time to catch more corpse spiders to make up for the cost. Seeing the eldest brother doing this, the Kunlun disciples also released their own flying swords. In an instant, the pile of corpse spiders disappeared where the sword-like rolled. After the recovery, Qiu Chang's Time once again released a thunderbolt with his fingers, which collapsed the passage behind. In this way, they finally escaped from the cave along the way they came. They immediately flew up on their swords and headed towards Kunlun. It was unknown how long it took for the Engido disciples to clear the rubble from the inside and see the light of day again. When they came outside, they found that the Kunlun disciples had long disappeared. "Senior Brother Wen," someone said with an uneasy look, "should this matter be reported to the sect?" "Of course." Senior Brother Wen narrowed his eyes and said viciously, "The last thing the leader released was clearly thunder magic." "Thunder magic?" The Engido disciples looked at each other, and then their faces changed drastically. Thunder magic, also known as the Five Thunders Orthodox method, is now rarely seen in the world because of the high risk of practicing it. According to the ancient books in the sect, thunder carries evil spirits and is naturally restrained by an evil magic. Therefore, thunder cultivators who practice thunder magic have always been the opponents of the Engido cultivators. If the man's thunder method had hit the Engido cultivators here instead of the corridor wall, it would have killed them all. When everyone recalled it again, they realized that they had just brushed shoulders with the god of death, and they couldn't help but feel very lucky. However, senior brother Wayne, who looked neither female nor manly, did not show any sign of luck. He knew that the Ingido disciples were far superior to the Kumlan sect disciples on the opposite side in terms of quality and quantity. Therefore, if the key refining stage Thunder Cultivator chose to stay and fight, it would probably be a fight that would end in a loss. Even if there were heavy casualties on his side, the Thunder Cultivator would definitely be focused on and killed on the spot. However, the opponent did not choose to advance because the Thunder method restrained the Ingi, but retreated immediately without hesitation, which was far beyond his expectations. According to the ancient books in the sect, the biggest weakness of Thunder Cultivators is evil spirits rushing to the gods. Beginners often become irritable, sensitive and aggressive because of practicing Thunder methods. In other words, what everyone encountered this time was a Thunder Cultivator with brains. If he is not investigated and eliminated as soon as possible, he will become a major concern for the sect in the future. Although this transition chapter seems to have nothing to watch, there are at least 3 or 4 foreshadowings. Chapter 33. Sisters, you want to follow me? It was not until Yaksu Peak that the Kumlan disciples put down the sword light, with faces full of relief and fear for surviving the disaster. As expected of senior brother Kyu. After a while, someone spoke up with a sincere tone. If senior brother Kyu had not come with us this time, we would have been in great danger this time. Everyone thought about it and realized that it was indeed the case. In addition, Kyu Chang's time did not gain enough benefits from this trip, so they hurriedly flattered and fawned on him, fearing that he would not come for the next mission. Senior brother Kyu saved my life, we will never forget it. Senior brother Kyu was so righteous, we will remember it in our hearts. Senior brother Kyu was so kind, I am willing to repay him with my body. Go, go, go. Soon, the female disciples present pushed the female disciple who spoke out of the circle together to prevent her from continuing to have an attack. Kyu Chang's Han responded to the rainbow farts of the disciples with an awkward but polite smile. Zhu Yinlian, who was ignored by everyone, stood lonely at the edge of the circle, staring blankly at Kyu Chang's Han, who was surrounded by people, wondering what he was thinking. After returning to Jinling, Kyu Chang's Han continued to practice thunder magic for a few days. Combined with his actual combat experience in the Earth Vein Ruins, he has confirmed the biggest disadvantage of Ukulele. It is too powerful. The advantages of this thunder method are that it is released quickly, consumes a lot of true energy, and has extremely strong destructive ability. It is a high explosive attack method. But it is precisely because of its great power that there is no way to control the strength and release it freely. In the Earth Vein Ruins, when the ceiling was blown up at the beginning, the rubble that collapsed almost smashed his own face. When the corridor was blown up for the second time, Kyu Chang's Han deliberately wanted to control the power of the thunder method. As a result, he found that he couldn't control it at all, and he was happy. A ball of lightning the size of a palm, when it is reduced to the size of a seal at the smallest, is still extremely powerful. If it explodes within one step, the aftermath will even hurt himself. Don't ask Kyu Chang's Han how he knew. Because of this, the information about the Jade Pivot Thunder needs to be kept secret as much as possible. If too many people know about it, it will be easy to be targeted and cracked. For example, when the lightning is shot out, the opponent shoots the flying sword in advance. Since the flying sword is much faster than the lightning, it only needs to collide with it at the moment the lightning is shot out to detonate in advance and blow up Kyu Chang's Han himself. That's too much. Shouting Jade Pivot Divine Thunder, then explode on the spot, covered in blood. If there are onlookers present, the synchronization value of the invincible setting is likely to fall directly. In short, the Jade Pivot Thunder is suitable as a killer, and it can only be used as a killer. This morning, Kyu Chang's Han was in his cave as usual, explaining the Nine Heavens King Wei and true words to his junior brothers and sisters. After the talk, it was time for questions and answers. Brother Kyu. Yan Zichua suddenly asked, I heard that you have recently practiced a very powerful Taoist technique. Can you tell us about it? Ahem. Kyu Chang's Han coughed a few times, and his mind quickly turned. First of all, the matter of Ukulele should be kept secret as much as possible. Junior sister's Yu is too familiar with me, so I can't hide it from others. Secondly, I can't refuse immediately. After all, it's not good for an invincible person to deliberately hide his trump card and not tell others. After thinking for a while, Kyu Chang's Han smiled and asked, Junior brother Yan, let me ask you first. Do you know what the two arts and two methods are? The so-called two arts are key refining and Taoism. The so-called two methods are magic swords and magic treasures. Yan Zichua said cautiously, I wonder if what I said is correct. That's right. Qiu Changtai nodded, and then explained to his junior brothers and sisters. The two arts respect the key refining art because only the key refining art determines the most critical realm of cultivation. Without a sufficient realm of cultivation, no matter how powerful the Taoism is, it is nothing but a castle in the air. The two methods respect the magic sword because there is a sealed Taoism on the magic sword, which can be used after refining. If you don't borrow the magic sword and want to practice Taoism yourself, it will undoubtedly take up your time for key refining. If you refine key slowly, your realm of cultivation will be slowly improved, which will in turn affect your life extension. The lifespan of an ordinary person is only about 100 years. A successful marrow cleansing can extend it to 200 years, a golden elixir can extend it to 800 years, and an infant can extend it to 5,000 years. After that, it is the time to ascend to heaven. Compared to the time required for cultivation advancement, this extended lifespan can be said to be very insufficient. So, before Qiu Changtai finished speaking, he heard Yuanzhen sneer and said, So, instead of asking about any Taoist techniques, it is better to focus on refining Qi and improving your cultivation. Senior brother Qiu has a clear mind for Taoism, and the speed of his cultivation is far beyond that of ordinary people. It only took him half a day to open up the sea of Qi. That's why he has the spare time to study a Taoist technique. How long did it take you, Yan Zichu, to pass the 3 levels in the past? A full half a month. How can you be qualified to cover Taoist techniques? Invincible character, synchronization value +1. Qiu Changtai. Oh, although this junior brother Yuan usually has a nicey face and often speaks too bluntly and mercilessly, he is actually quite cute. He was secretly pleased, while Chang'an and Thong Tianhua were a little indignant. Yan Zichua was not angry, but bowed and said, Thank you, senior brother Yuan, for your guidance. I have learned a lot. What junior brother Yuan said is correct, but it is a bit absolute. Qiu Changtai said with a smile, if everyone plans to stay in the sect for life, then it's fine. If you want to go out for training, it is also necessary to practice some Taoist magic to protect yourself. After all, the Taoist magic on the flying sword is often consistent with the properties of the flying sword itself. If you encounter an enemy that restrains the properties of your flying sword, and you have no other means to turn the tables, then it will be dangerous. Senior brother Qiu said it well. Chengxian and Thong Tianhua deliberately shouted. Yuanzhen's face changed slightly, feeling slapped in the face, but after all, he had no experience in going out for training, and senior brother Qiu was already a king in this regard, so he could only bow his head and remain silent. Okay. Qiu Changtai clapped his hands and said, in short, for now, everyone should focus on refining Qi to improve their realm. If you want to increase your means of self-protection, you can go out with me for training in private. I will see where your actual combat flaws and deficiencies are, and then give targeted supplementary suggestions. Everyone nodded in thanks, then stood up and left one after another. Only Zhu Yingyan was still sitting on the futon, silent and motionless. Seeing that everyone else had left, Qiu Changtai smiled and said, Junior sister, what's the matter? I want to practice a Taoist method. Zhu Yingyan said concisely. Upon hearing this, Qiu Changtai did not answer immediately. He pondered for a moment and asked, Do you see that I have mastered a Taoist method, so you want to emulate me? Zhu Yingyan sneered and said, If you were afraid that I will catch up with you, you can choose not to give me any guidance. Qiu Changtai smiled and said, Junior sisters who do you think I am? Well, with your qualifications, it is no problem for you to practice Taoism, but the specific method you choose depends on your purpose. The purpose is to defeat your thunder method. Zhu Yingyan blurted out without hesitation. Why are you always staring at me? Qiu Changtai didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Can't you focus on perfecting yourself? Zhu Yingyan was silent for a moment, and suddenly laughed. Didn't senior brother say, on the road to cultivation, it is really lonely to walk alone. With junior sister accompanying you, there will be no regrets. If my strength is far inferior to yours, how can you let me accompany you? Ahem. Qiu Changtai was accidentally penetrated by her beautiful smile, and quickly turned his head to adjust his expression, then smiled bitterly and said, Yinlian, why did you suddenly confess to senior brother and scare me? I didn't confess to you. Zhu Yingyan jumped up and said angrily, I just prefer to chase you than be thrown away by you. At this point, she realized that there was still ambiguity, and hurriedly said, Of course, catching up with you is the first step, and the second step is to surpass you. Then, the one who is thrown away is you, Kyo Chain's Iron. Then I'll wait and see, junior sister. Kyo Chain's Iron said with a smile. Zhu Yinglyan gritted her teeth in anger. The Kunlun mirror, which had been observing the two of them, could not bear to see him bullying his junior sister, so it quietly opened a corner of the mirror. While weakening his invincible personality, it also released his true temperament. Remove the mental suggestion. Seeing that his senior brother did not care about his provocation and showed a teasing and arrogant smile, Zhu Yinglyan was so angry that he almost trembled, and felt that the blood was almost rushing to his head. Suddenly, he found that his senior brother's temperament seemed to have changed. He was no longer like the high-handed, arrogant and cold god who always looked down on him. The gentle smile on the other party at this time was more like a childhood sweetheart next-door brother, with expectations for the future of the two, and made a kind promise to himself to surpass me. The blood rushing to his head suddenly receded, and his body gradually became strangely hot. In order to hide the inexplicable slight throbbing in his chest, Zhu Yinglyan turned his head and said vaguely in an almost inaudible voice, "Humph, just wait and see." Kyo Chain's Iron. Chapter 34. Being targeted by Mishi. It has been a while since the 3 characters and 3 parallel lines were developed. He took some time to sort out the progress of each line. Kunlun Kyo Chain's Iron is currently the fastest. This generation's chief senior brother, the master's direct disciple, not only has the immortal key refining technique and the 5 Thunders orthodox law, but is also widely loved by many Kunlun outer disciples. It can be said that the future is already smooth. Penglai is currently the most backward. He is just an ordinary disciple who has just joined the Yu King Temple. He is a small fish and has not found an opportunity to climb up. Every day he just listens to classes, and listens to classes. It is difficult to describe the current progress of Shushan Ling Yunpo. It can only be said that there are good and bad. Fortunately, there is the meticulous care of senior sister Anne. The bad thing is that the cheap master Sujian not only closed the dead, but also attracted countless hatred before the closed-door retreat, which led to the situation of the senior sister and brother in Shushan. It can be said that it is difficult to move forward. Now they are even calculated by Ziyun Peak. They are forced to participate in a sword duel, and it is a key refining stage against a marrow washing stage. How miserable it is. Speaking of the upcoming duel, Ling Yunpo now has 2 trump cards. The first is the 10th level Immortal Sword Kingpin, which has the Taoist magic green mist cover and the Kanshan Mountains, which can raise boundless fog. Those who were in it will have their consciousness restricted, their perceptions blinded, and the power of non-water Taoist magic will be halved. The second is Kyo Chain's Iron's Thunder Magic, Jade Pivot Thunder. He has already made a plan. When fighting, he will first activate the Taoist magic on the Kingpin sword to isolate the inside and outside with a thick fog, and then use this Jade Pivot Thunder to kill the opponent directly and ensure that the existence of the Thunder magic will not be leaked. Now, Kyo Chain's Iron can't say that he is proficient in Jade Pivot Thunder, but can only be regarded as roughly mastered. But just the degree of roughly mastered has already been extremely terrifying. Any cultivator below the Jindan level will either die or be injured if they're hit by this thunder head-on, so it is his biggest killer at present. What else can I say? I can only praise the wisdom of Master Ziwia, and thank Kunlun Mirror for his gift of clear mind, which allowed me to master such an awesome Taoist method. Next, I just need to reload Ling Yunpo and continue to practice swordsmanship. Kyo Chain's Iron thought for a long time in that cave and decided to reload the file. Ling Yunpo's synchronization value is still quite high now. Last time, he used the villain loses hand to recite a lot of lines in front of his senior sister, so there is no need to worry for the time being. Luo Yan's synchronization value is already very low. If it goes down, it will affect the effect of Mirror Flower and Water Moon. Forget it, let's go to Penglai first and look for an opportunity. Ajin, reload the file. Point 3. Penglai Yu King Temple, Dormitory. Character Identity. Luo Yan. Mirror Flower and Water Moon template is overwritten, and is traveling through time and space. Luo Yan opened his eyes from the soft couch. It should be explained here that the so-called save mechanism of Kunlun Mirror refers to marking the time or space coordinates at the moment. The so-called reload mechanism is to transfer his body to the time or space coordinate marked by the last save, and then replace the illusion mask of Jingwu Shuyu. For example, Luo Yan initially saved in the dormitory, and then his body was teleported away. Then, as Ling Yunpo and Qiu Chang Tian, he lived in Shushan and Kunlun for a period of time respectively. Finally, he was teleported to the time or space coordinates where Luoyan had saved. The front and back were completely seamless, so that even if someone around was observing him, they would not find any signs of him leaving in the middle. Of course, just in case, Luoyan would still choose to save or load in a deserted place. After a night in the dormitory, the next morning, Luoyan planned to go to class as usual. As a result, on the way to the school, he was blocked by Shilili, who had been prepared. Tell the truth. Shilili pulled him to a secluded place, directly used the heaven-flipping seal, and threatened, "Are you a spy from the sect outside?" "Senior sister, what are you talking about?" Luoyan showed a helpless expression of "I'm stupid," coupled with his drooping eyebrows and kind squinting eyes. It really made Shilili, who was originally confident, a little shaken. Hypocritical personality, synchronization value +1. Your entrance examination. Shilili took out his graded paper and questioned, "Before the exam, you clearly admitted that you didn't know what the dozam was. But you got full marks in this exam." "Full marks? Can you be a little more fake? How did you get full marks without studying the dozang? Don't tell me that you guessed the answers to 1,000 questions." "But senior sister, before the exam, I studied the dozam," Luoyan said innocently. "Ha, so you admit that you are lying when you told me you didn't study the Daoist canon, right?" Shilili shouted triumphantly, like a cat that stepped on a mouse's tail. "When I first met my senior sister, I had indeed not studied the Daoist canon," Luoyan explained awkwardly, "but I spent an hour before the exam studying the 3 caves in the Daoist canon pavilion, so I was lucky enough to pass the entrance exam." "Oh, right." He smiled gratefully again. "It was my senior sister who reminded me that the main content of the entrance exam was the 3 caves. I even forgot to thank my senior sister." Hypocritical personality, synchronization value +1. Shilili was already dumbfounded, but suddenly she reacted, grabbed his arms and asked hurriedly, "You said that you stayed in the Dozam pavilion for an hour, and you memorized all the 3 caves and understood them thoroughly?" "Yes." Luoyan said embarrassedly, "Senior sister, don't laugh at me for cramming. I didn't know that our sect would test the Dozam before." Hypocritical personality, synchronization value +1. "How is it possible?" Shilili shouted in disbelief. "There are 24 scriptures in the 3 caves of the 3,000 Dozans alone. How can you finish reading them in 1 hour?" Luoyan looked at her with a pure and innocent expression, laughing in his heart. Although she said "how is it possible," the reminder of the increase in synchronization rate showed that she actually believed it a little bit in her heart. Don't ask why, just ask that this fat sheep is particularly easy to deceive. "Okay, in that case, then I will test you." Shilili calmed down and said, "I will now pass on the 9 Cauldrons Divine Pill Sutra to you. I will only read it once to see if you can remember and understand it." She widened her beautiful big eyes and recited quickly, "If you want to make a magic pill, you must first make chuan. Take 10 pounds of mercury and 20 pounds of lead, put them in an iron container, and turn on the fire. The lead and mercury will spit out their essence, which is purple or golden. Use an iron spoon to scoop it up, and it is called chuan. Only 1,000 words, which took 3 or 4 minutes to read." Finally, Shilili stopped talking and said coldly, "Did you remember it, genius little junior brother?" "I probably remembered it." Luoyan nodded. "Well, let me test you." Shilili sneered, "Tell me, according to the theory of 9 Cauldrons Magic Pill Classic, what is the preparation method of Wandan?" Luoyan smiled slightly and said loudly, "Since it is Wandan, you should take 9 things, namely, alum stone, yew stone, dahi, rotten salt, oyster, red ochre, earth dragon marrow, mica, and talc. Burn it for a day and a night with a strong fire, and mix them together to make it like powder. Then add the left flavor to make it like mud. Put 1 catty of mercury in a pot." As he fluently spoke the method of Wandan, Shilili's expression quickly changed from sneer to dullness, from dullness to suspicion, from suspicion to shock, and from shock to ecstasy. Is there really someone in this world who has a photographic memory and can understand everything he hears? Luoyan felt a little regretful because this identity didn't have a synchronization value. He only heard Shilili suddenly shouting, "Quick! Junior brother, I'll take you to see my father and ask him to accept you as his disciple." Chapter 35. Tiangong Fan Junior Brother Luoyan. When Shilili pulled Luoyan in front of Elder Shiding and finished talking excitedly, Elder Shiding couldn't help but reveal a question mark on his face. "I went to check for spies, but I brought back a disciple." When Shiluli went to check him, Elder Shiding also watched his exam video records, but he didn't find any problems. It's better to be more precise. How could a spy who should be low-key be so stupid as to get a perfect score in the entrance exam? Besides, if his comprehension talent is really as exaggerated as Luli said, then coming here to be a spy is really a waste of talent. Wouldn't it be better if the sect carefully cultivated him? Whether it is the alchemy method, the essence of casting treasures, or the formation with a massive amount of calculation, it requires extremely high comprehension to master. If the comprehension is not enough, the speed of learning, that's touching. Thinking of this, Elder Shiding said calmly, "Your name is Luoyan, right?" "Hello, Elder." Luoyan saluted quickly. "Who are you from?" Elder Shiding asked. "I was born in Linan County, Yangzhou." Luoyan said respectfully, "My parents are both dead, and I am alone. In my early years, I wrote and graded papers for the teacher in a private school. Hypocritical personality, synchronization value +1. Well." Elder Shiding did not comment. "What about the birth date?" "Luoyan, do you need to calculate the birth date when you become a disciple?" He was a little stunned, and Shiluli next to him shouted in shame and anger, "Father! Why are you calculating the birth date of my junior brother?" "Father, this is actually..." Elder Shiding only then realized that his question just now is indeed ambiguous. He wanted Luoyan's birth date, but in fact he just wanted to use sheer divine numbers to calculate whether Luoyan's background was true. But to his daughter's ears, it sounded like he was calculating whether their horoscopes were compatible. Of course, Elder Shiding couldn't explain to his daughter in front of Luoyan, "I'm not calculating marriage, I'm confirming the truth of what he said." He could only lie with a shameless face. "Father just wanted to calculate whether he is suitable to be my disciple, then why didn't you calculate it when my senior brothers and sisters joined?" Shiluli asked angrily. "That's because..." Elder Shiding couldn't continue talking, so he waved his hand and changed the subject. "Forget it, Luoyan, I'll tell you. My name is Shiding. I entered Taoism by casting a tripod in my early years. Now I am proficient in all kinds of refining methods and inherit the Tiangong Fang. In Pengliu King Temple, although I dare not claim to be the best in refining, I can say that I am not inferior to anyone. I saw your entrance examination. You're extremely talented in comprehension and are suitable to inherit my Taoism. So I ask you here, are you willing to become my disciple and learn the method of refining?" Luoyan immediately became solemn when he heard this, and bowed respectfully. "Disciple is willing to learn. Hypocritical personality, synchronization value +1. Okay." Elder Shiding smiled and twirled his beard. Although Luoyan was decisive in becoming a disciple, he had actually thought it through in his heart. The tripod is a weapon to suppress the formation, and entering Taoism is a very strict term. To use a real metaphor, it is almost the top level among academicians. Shiding's Henran claimed that he entered the Dao by casting a tripod, which shows that he has a very high attainment in the formation. Then proficient in all kinds of refining methods. This is a short sentence with a lot of gold content. There are many methods of refining, including tripods, mirrors, seals, pots, swords, kins and belts. Who dares to say that he can master them all? Therefore, there are the fewest cultivators who practice the Dao of refining, which leads to the high price of magic weapons all year round. Here, sword casting needs to be brought out. The flying sword has the fastest speed and strong lethality, and can also seal the Taoism. It can be called the gun of the world of cultivation. Therefore, all sects and schools have flying swords. At present, the casting of magic swords in the world of cultivation is only in Pengliu, 6 out of 10, which is almost a monopoly in the future. There is no need to say how much wealth is behind it. In short, hold on to the thighs of Elder Shiding, and you will not lack flying swords, magic weapons or spirit stones in the future. As for Shiluli, she is just a young lady who is ignorant of worldly affairs. If Master doesn't want me to be involved with her, I promise I won't pay any attention to her." Seeing that Luoyan chose to become his disciple without hesitation, Elder Shiding was also very satisfied. Due to the disguised temperament of the hypocritical character and the spiritual suggestion of the mirror flower and water moon, Elder Shiding had a very good first impression of Luoyan. He has a high level of comprehension and an honest character. Who wouldn't love such a disciple? Shiluli pouted beside her, feeling a little unhappy. In her expectation, her father should have looked down on Luoyan, and then she strongly recommended him, so that her father reluctantly accepted Luoyan as a disciple. So Luoyan was grateful and loyal to his senior sister. Then, his father finally discovered that Luo Yan had a high level of comprehension, looked at him with new eyes, and praised himself for his vision. This is how it should develop. Why not follow my script? However, after having a little junior brother, she is no longer the youngest. So she excitedly regarded herself as a senior sister and said to Luo Yan, "Since you have also become my father's disciple, I will take you to familiarize yourself with the environment and meet other senior brothers and sisters." Elder Shiding couldn't help but smile as he watched his daughter pull Luo Yan out. Not to mention the matter of men and women, his daughter has been surrounded by senior brothers and sisters since she was a child, and she has been spoiled very much, and has also developed a naive character. If Luo Yan, a little junior brother, can make her regard herself as a senior sister and cultivate a sense of responsibility, it must be a good thing. As for whether his daughter will like him in the future, that is their own business. Shili took Luo Yan and took a walk around the Tiangong workshop. By the way, he also visited the residences of the senior brothers and sisters. The eldest brother Lamushu, Jintan's Hinran, mainly practices the way of swordsmanship, and also has considerable attainments in Penglai sword control. It seems that he is addicted to alcohol. Shili took Luo Yan into the main hall and saw him leaning on the armchair, drunk and sleeping. Shili wrinkled his nose in disgust, introduced a few words lightly, and then took Luo Yan away, as if he was afraid that he would be infected with alcohol addiction. Second senior sister Lady Kain is also a Jindan's Hinran. She specializes in making zithers. She also has a high talent in music and divination, but her thinking and speaking are a bit dull. In order to express her welcome to the new junior brother, senior sister Lady directly gave a phoenix tail zither. The whole body is made of 1,000-year-old sycamore wood, and the wood veins are carefully dredged with true essence. It is a musical instrument of extremely fine quality. Qiu Cheng Tian himself is proficient in music, and has worked hard on flutes. He plans to encounter any big scene in the future. When he needs to appear, he can be the flute before the person arrives and come in a white dress. But he was not good at playing the zither, so Luo Yan was going to hand over the phoenix tail zither to Qiu Cheng Tian, and then give it to his junior sister to play with. The third sister Liang Guohua was still a Jintan's Hinran, and she was studying mirror making and seal making, and had rich experience in sealing techniques. The magic weapon Fanshan seal that she usually used was cast by her in imitation of the acquired spiritual treasure Fanshan seal, and it is said that it is estimated to have 30% of the power of the original treasure. 30% of the power of the acquired spiritual treasure is already outrageous, okay? The 10th level immortal sword can be bent by you, but it is weaker than the 11th level immortal sword such as the Chifeng Guang sword. Shili bent softly and hard, and asked Liang Guohua for in passing mirror for Luo Yan. It is said that if you carry it with you, you can resist a fatal attack at a critical moment. Luo Yan was flattered and thanked him again and again. The fourth brother Shi Wenshi, a waffle-level cultivator, specializes in making pots and bells. In addition, his family inherited space-related Taoist arts are very profound. It is said that almost 80% of the storage bags, and Kaiankung bags on the market come from the Guanglingshi family behind their fourth senior brother. However, this family has never produced a unique cultivator in history, so it is very low-key and belongs to the invisible rich in the world of cultivation. As a meeting gift, Master Shi Wen gave Luo Yan a treasure bag with a huge space inside, which can even fit a large sea ship. Luo Yan was very surprised and hurried to thank him. It must be said that the monks of Penglai King Temple are obsessed with practicing various arts, and the number of Jindan and Yuning cultivators ranks last among the 3 orthodox sects. No wonder the head of Kunlun Ziwei calls them idiots. However, Luo Yan found that in the Tiangong workshop of Elder Shidin, everyone not only knows each other, but also has a good relationship to give magic weapons at will. It's like a family, which makes Luo Yan very warm. On the other hand, on the Kunlun side, although the head of Ziwei has many disciples, the brothers and sisters usually don't even say a word except listening to the scriptures together in the lecture room. The fickleness of human nature pales in comparison. Chapter 36a. Dog liquor can't get the senior sister. Things on Luo Yan's side came to an end, and the synchronization value finally got rid of the danger line. Therefore, after Shilili took him to the single room at Tiangong Fan for resettlement, Luo Yan saved the game here, and then read the game to teleport his body to Shushan, and used the Mirror Flower Water Moon technique to put on Ling Yunpo's character setting. Point 2. Shushan Shang King Sect, King Luo Peak. Character Identity. Ling Yunpo. Mirror Flower Water Moon template is overwritten, and is traveling through time and space. Recently, Senior Sister Nzisu has been particularly enthusiastic. Even though he was born with sword bones and strong bones, he was trained to death. In addition, in order to practice the two-handed sword technique, Senior Sister is said to have invited someone to teach him, but no one knows who it is. Ling Yunpo stayed in the wing room for a while, then picked up the Kingping sword and planned to go out for a walk. As a result, before they even reached the main hall, they heard a strange male voice coming from the main hall. Shi Ziming's former senior sister died in your hands, so Shi Ziming is not here for the political affairs hall, but is here to seek revenge on you out of personal grudges. I know, junior brother Lin. Zisu said irritably. Ling Yunpo subconsciously thought she was calling him, but later realized it was Lin instead of Lin. Well, senior sister Am's accent belongs to the dialect, so it is normal that she can't distinguish between the front and back nasal sounds. Shi Ziming is dead, so I don't plan to pursue it further. Zisu continued, the most urgent thing now is, listen to me. The male voice interrupted her and said hurriedly, Shi Ziming's fake pill method is exactly the purple key gathering at the top of Ziyun Peak. Do you understand? Although Shi Ziming hates you, it is Ziyun Peak that is fanning the flames behind the scenes. It is because Ziyun Peak failed to harm you that it changed its target to harm your junior brother. If Ling Yunpo goes to compete with loses, it is equivalent to stepping into a trap set by others. If I were you, I would never let junior brother Ling go to the danger alone. Zisu sighed and said, junior brother Ling has made up his mind, I really can't persuade him anymore, then I will persuade him. The male voice said. Who are you talking to? Ling Yunpo was furious, and walked into the main hall with his head held high. Zisu was standing in the middle of the main hall, wearing a white shirt and skirt, with a look of worry between her eyebrows. A strange young man stood beside her, wearing a green robe, carrying a sword case on his back, with a stern face, whispering something to her. Seeing Ling Yunpo coming out of the backyard, Zisu immediately put away her worries, smiled again, called him over and said, Junior brother, this is senior brother Lin Yuanzhen, I asked him to teach you the art of controlling the sword with two hands. Hello senior brother Lin. Ling Yunpo bowed lightly. Jin Gangfen, Lin Yuanzhen. The other party also bowed in return and said proudly, let me make a deal first. Your senior sister asked me to teach you. Although I agreed, I am not your master and have no obligation to explain to you in a way that you can understand. If you are not talented enough and can't learn what I teach, then give up the fight as soon as possible and don't let your senior sister worry about you. You? Ling Yunpo laughed in anger. Who the hell are you? How dare you jump in my face in front of my senior sister? Brother Lin is the third on the immortal sword list. Zisu smiled and said, don't be fooled by his harsh words, but he is actually cold on the outside but warm on the inside. Since he promised to teach you, he will definitely teach you well. The third on the immortal sword list. Ling Yunpo frowned, realizing that this person was not simple. The so-called immortal sword list is a similar thing designed by the Shanking sect of Shushan to encourage the foundation-building disciples to compete with each other. Every once in a while, the Shanking sect will hold an internal competition, and the ranking of the immortal sword list will be ranked according to the results of the competition. To a certain extent, this immortal sword list does have its significance, that is, it directly shows the strength of each disciple. If you are the 30th on the immortal sword list, you must know your own limits. Don't challenge the top 10 on the immortal sword list, otherwise you will die without knowing how. After all, there is no internet in the world of cultivation, and the news is blocked. Unless you were as awesome as a certain immortal sword list leader who mows down the sword fairy, and almost forges a blood feud with every sword peak, it is difficult for your reputation to spread to other peaks. For example, Ling Yunpo had never heard of the name of Lin Yuanzhen, the king of gold and swords. But when he heard rank 3 on the immortal sword ranking, he understood. A great master of the Watful level who is slightly weaker than my senior sister. He instantly understood the other party's strength. Then please teach me, senior brother Lin. He said reservedly. Humph. Lin Yuanzhen snorted coldly and walked outside. On the open space outside the Taoist temple on King Luo Peak, Lin Yuanzhen summoned 2 flying swords, hovered them side by side in front of him, and said, the one on the right is my natal sword, the 9th rank Earth-type flying sword Kyu. The one on the left is my usual auxiliary sword, the 9th rank Gold-type flying sword Changping. I need to teach you the method of Qi circulation in the two-handed sword-wielding technique. You only need to compete in swordsmanship. There is no need to use your own cultivation and sword skills. He suddenly shouted in a deep voice, Ling Yunpo. Draw the sword. Ling Yunpo immediately made a sword gesture, and the Kingping sword flew out from behind and stopped in front of him. This is my 10th rank water-type flying sword Kingpin. He said loudly, just do as senior brother said, only compete in swordsmanship, no Taoism, no cultivation. Okay. Lin Yulanzhen shouted loudly, senior sister Anne, give him another flying sword. Zisu, who was standing next to her, stretched out her hand and pointed, and the frost sword shot out from her fingertips and stopped in front of Ling Yunpo. Ling Yunpo stretched out his left hand and established a key connection with the frost sword. Under Zisu's control, he attached his spiritual consciousness to it without any difficulty and successfully gained command of the frost sword. You control Kingpin with your right hand. What key circulation route do you take? Lin Yulanzhen asked loudly. The Hanshin small intestine meridian. Ling Yunpo also answered loudly, out of Jigyu, through Kachi, across Du, turn to Shangyang, and connect with the Kingpin sword. Okay. Lin Yulanzhen said quickly, yin and yang must be combined. You use your left hand to circulate Qi, follow the Hanjue and Perikya meridian route, out of Tiangchai, through Kuz, across Laogan, turn to Thongchong, and try to control the frost sword. Ling Yunpo did as he was told, and moved Qi in order. Soon he found that while controlling the Kingpin sword, the frost sword could also be used as if it were his arm. Zisu watched from the side and couldn't help but smile with joy. Her own two-handed sword controlling technique circulated Qi, with the right arm circulating the Hanshin small intestine meridian and the left arm circulating the Hanshin lung meridian. However, when Ling Yunpo was taught the same way, he just couldn't learn it. Now it seems that due to different physical conditions, the appropriate Qi circulation routes are indeed different. Using two different powers and wielding two swords at the same time is just the basics of the basics. Lin Yulanzhen said coldly, the important thing is to combine it with actual combat and use it skillfully. Let me ask you first, what sword techniques have you learned since you joined? Of course, it's the Shushan sword controlling technique and our 7 killing sword technique. Ling Yunpo answered immediately. You only have the Shushan sword art? Lin Yulanzhen said coldly, we sword cultivators use swords to break laws. There are thousands of laws, and you only know one sword art, how can you break it completely? He sneered repeatedly, and the look of disappointment in his eyes became more and more serious. The 7 killing swords are known for their two-handed sword control, with completely different left and right sword paths. But you only know the Shushan sword art, can it be that the left sword also follows the Shushan sword path, and the right hand also follows the Shushan sword path? You might as well tie the two swords together. Such a level is really a disgrace to senior sister Anne's reputation. Don't say you're her junior brother when you're outside in the future. Lin Yulanzhen. Zisu immediately raised his eyebrows and shouted, how can my King Luo Peep teach disciples? Do you need your Jingan Peep to interfere? Junior brother Lin calls you senior brother, you really don't consider yourself an outsider. Yes, senior sister Anne. Lin Yulanzhen hurriedly smiled apologetically, turned his head and glared at Ling Yunpo, I will use the Washan sword technique to hit you first, you watch my sword path carefully. The Shushan main storyline is officially opened. Chapter 37. Why do we need a grandfather when we have a little sister? The cold grey Kaiyu sword shot over, but Ling Yunpo controlled the Kingpin sword with his right hand. Lin Yulanzhen pinched the sword with his left hand again, and the golden red Chanbing sword made an arc and shot from the other side. Ling Yunpo quickly used his left hand to control the Xuanjing sword to try to block it. However, both the Kaiyu sword on the right and the Chanbing sword on the left had extremely flexible flight trajectories and extremely tricky routes, and they frequently rushed to the loopholes of the Kingpin and Xuanjing swords. Ling Yunpo had to control the Kingpin sword to suppress the Kaiyu sword on the opposite side, and also controlled the Xuanjing sword, which he was not very proficient in, to block the guerrillas of the Chanbing sword. How could he have time to observe and learn the Washan sword technique? He was caught between a rock and a hard place. When the Kingpin sword on the right gained an advantage, the Xuanjing sword on the left immediately became disadvantaged. When the Xuanjing sword on the left recovered from the disadvantage, the Kingpin sword on the right was disrupted again. He was really in a mess. Lin Yulanzhen took the opportunity to pursue, and immediately stepped up the attack of both swords, using the Washan sword technique with all his strength, and shouted in a cold voice, the sword path must be steady. If you seat both sides, you will lose both sides. Do you understand the priorities? With this kind of understanding, I don't know how you became a disciple of King Luo Peak. Aren't you afraid of embarrassing senior sister Anne, Lin Yulanzhen? Zisu glared, if you dare to let me hear you insult my junior brother again, I will pierce your scapula with my sword first. Sorry, senior sister Anne. Lin Yulanzhen hurriedly said ingratiatingly, I don't dislike junior brother Ling's talent. I think it's because the 10th level Kingping sword is unruly, and he hasn't reached the marrow washing stage yet, so he can't use his body to cultivate the sword and completely refine the Kingping sword, which has caused the sword path to be ineffective and affected his swordsmanship. Senior Sister Am's face was slightly relieved, but the Kingping sword was not happy about it, and immediately yelled in Ling Yun's broken sea of consciousness. What kind of bullshit is this guy talking about? You can blame me for your poor swordsmanship. Kingping. Ling Yunpo said coldly, how about I throw you into the sword pool and you find someone with better swordsmanship? Master Sword Master. Kingping Sword quickly smiled coquettishly, a loyal minister does not serve two masters, and a chaste woman does not marry two husbands. How could I leave Master Sword Master? Jian. Kunlun Mirror interrupted and said mockingly, you look like a lickspittle, and you were about 60% similar to Lin Yulanzhen on the opposite side. Yo, don't slander the good sword with empty words. Kingping Sword argued with it, my natal flying sword, trying to please my Master Sword Master, can I be called a lickspittle? At this point, her voice became soft again. Master Sword Master, let me tell you, the sword path of the guy on the opposite side is an Ichwashan swordsmanship. It looks sophisticated and complicated, but the real essence is a vicious sneak attack. If he can attack in a blind spot, he will never take a frontal route. If the sword moves in an unconventional way, the frontal defense will be weakened, so this sword technique will never be accepted by the mainstream. For example, when his long-armed sword is blocked by the frost sword, it will bounce back with the force of the recoil, and then pull back and retreat. This is called turning points in Washan sword technique, and it is a preparatory move for Romin, and its flaw is also very obvious. You only need to change the target of the frost sword to Lin Yulanzhen when it retreats, and stab it with all your strength, so that you can just avoid the tip of the long-armed sword and break through its defense. This move is called the dagger revealed at the end of the picture, which is one of the few assassination sword moves in Washan sword technique that is worth learning. After she said this and that, Ling Yunpo immediately did it. The long-armed sword stabbed from a tricky angle, but was blocked by Ling Yunpo's frost sword. The metal clashed, sparks flew, and both sides were bounced back by the recoil force. As expected, the long-armed sword sank slightly. Ling Yunpo could see it clearly. He immediately infused his left arm with true energy and quickly urged the frost sword forward. As expected. It would have been fine if the long-armed sword hadn't sunk. As the sword sank, the frost sword was urged forward at the same time, just missing the long-armed sword by a hair's breadth and stabbing directly at Lin Yulanzhen, who was defenseless from behind. Lin Yulanzhen was originally concentrating on attacking, but was almost scared out of his wits by this sudden, piercing stab. He quickly switched the Kaiyu sword back to defense and blocked it with just half a step in front of him. What a pity. Kingping Sword sighed and said regretfully, Master Sword Master, if you had used all your strength just now, Lin Yulanzhen would have been dead now. Humph. Ling Yunpo said coldly, for the sake of my senior sister, spare his life. Okay. Lin Yulanzhen on the opposite side came back to his senses from his fear, and as if to save face, he shouted loudly, what a good move the dagger revealed. Let's see how you can break this move. He pinched out a few sword gestures with his left hand, and Kaiyu sword path immediately became more weird. This move is called Flourishing Flowers, but it is actually flashy and impractical. It is the worst move in Washan sword technique. Kingping Sword quickly transmitted his thoughts. You don't need to observe its sword path, that's just to confuse you. It will suddenly pause before launching an attack. You seize this opportunity, drive my sword to suddenly chop down. This is called bear opening the mounting, which is specially used to break the flowering in brocade. Although the above text is very long, in the communication between Ling Yunpo and Kingping Sword, it is just a thought. Ling Yunpo did as he was told, the frost sword was still fighting with the long weapon sword, and the Kingping Sword was swaying slightly, pretending to observe the sword path of the Kaiyu sword. Sure enough, the Kaiyu sword was still moving strangely in the last second, and suddenly stopped in the next second, and then it was about to take advantage of the situation to pass the Kingping Sword's defense and stab directly in the direction of Ling Yunpo. As a result, as soon as it accelerated, it was chopped from top to bottom by the well-prepared Kingping Sword, and suddenly fell heavily to the ground. Half of it was buried in the ground in an instant, and under Lin Yulanzhen's exasperated urging, it was pulled out again in a mess. What a great move, bear opening the mounting. Lin Yulanzhen laughed in anger, trying not to lose his composure in front of senior sister Am, and said with forced composure, you have grasped the essence of Washan swordsmanship. It's nothing more than a matter of surprise. but you just focus on taking risks. What about head-on defense, sir? I'll use the Watai Mountain Hunyuan swordsmanship, and you can watch. His finger movements changed rapidly, and the sword paths of Caillou and Champing changed again, and he began to fight with the Frost Sword and Kingping Sword. Kingping Sword sneered a few times and said disdainfully, "This Watai Mountain Hunyuan sword technique is said to be a blend of thousands of unorthodox techniques. It has many changes and is extremely defensive and airtight, but why should we attack its defense, sir? The biggest drawback of the Hunyuan sword technique is that it is not Hunyuan enough. It borrows a move here and intercepts a move there, and piece together a strange beast. It's better not to learn this kind of rubbish swordsmanship. You don't have to care about the opponent's sword path, just use all your strength to drive the two swords to hit him. He will definitely withdraw his changes and be forced to go back to rescue." Ling Yunpo did as he was told. The Frost Sword and the Kingping Sword rushed straight to Lin Yuanzhen, and really forced the opponent to withdraw his sword and go back to rescue, no longer wandering around and changing. Lin Yuanzhen gnashed his teeth, not even looking at Nzisu's expression, and roared. The Watai Mountain Hunyuan sword technique needs to be used in conjunction with the various unconventional spells of their sentient beings. Without the spells, it is indeed useless, so it's better not to learn it. Look at my Shirdayo Geisha sword. As soon as the voice fell, the Caillou and Champing swords immediately became murderous, and the sword moves became fierce. Kingping Sword snorted coldly and said, "The Shirdayo Geisha sword is indeed a pure sword technique that kills to the extreme. Just focusing on killing, it loses its changes and is easy to be deliberately targeted. Listen to me, the essence of the Geisha sword lies in its force angle and method. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Mundo Fanfic Novelers, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelers. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels." Chapter 38 I defeated Senior Brother Lin all by myself. The essence of the Shirdayo Geisha sword lies in its strange power generation method. It originated from the ancient Western religion, a practice book called Yejurda. Its characteristic is the threefold power generation, with each level stronger than the previous one, but that's all. If you don't understand this characteristic and rashly use the flying sword to block it, you'll definitely suffer a big loss. However, with the reminder of the Kingping Sword, Ling Yunpo will naturally not be hit. With the qualification of natural sword bones, he has a strong ability to control the flying sword. Kingping Sword only explained it once, and he immediately mastered it completely. The Kingping and Xuangjing double swords collided with the Caillou and Champing double swords in the air, and the latter immediately became a little difficult to support. The 9th level flying sword is naturally no match for the 10th level flying sword in terms of head-on collision. Lin Yuanzhen's face was cold, and he quietly used the secret power generation method of the Geisha sword, and the power on the two swords suddenly became heavier. Unexpectedly, the power of the opponent's flying sword also suddenly increased, forcing Caillou and Champing to fly back instantly, almost hitting Lin Yuanzhen himself. Lin Yuanzhen. "I just used it once, how come you suddenly know it?" He gritted his teeth and said fiercely. "The Geisha sword is simple and crude, and the power method is too easy to imitate. It's not difficult. Look at my Donghaiyu sword." Before he finished speaking, Caillou and Champing's two swords moved flexibly. Kingping Sword said lazily, "Donghaiyu sword, the swordsmanship of Penglaiyu King Temple, must be used in conjunction with the talisman array, otherwise it's just a show. You can just hit it casually." Ling Yunpo remained calm and quickly urged Kingping and Xuangjing swords to easily break the defense of the opponent's two swords. Lin Yuanzhen's eyes were wide open, and he was furious. It seemed that he had been too arrogant before, but ended up being shown off by Nzisu's junior brother in all kinds of fancy ways. He couldn't get off the stage at all, and could only yell. "Learning so much is just empty talk, just watch me use the authentic Kunlun swordsmanship of Chuan men." Before Kingping Sword could speak, Ling Yunpo's eyes lit up. "Oh, I'm very familiar with this." In just a few moves, Ling Yunpo used his extremely rich experience and suppressed the Caillou and Champing swords with Kingping Sword alone. Xuangjing sword took the opportunity to go around and pressed against Lin Yuanzhen's back. Lin Yuanzhen stood there in shock, his lips tightly pursed, his eyes wide open, as if he wanted to defend himself, but in the end he didn't say anything. Nzisu, who was watching the battle from the sidelines, finally laughed and said, "Junior brother Lin, thank you for your guidance this time." "Forget it. Lin Yulanzhen waved his hand dejectedly, and Caillou retracted and flew to his side, and the long weapon turned into a stream of light and went into the sword box behind him. He turned around, not letting the two see his expression, and just said in a muffled voice, "I, Lin Yulanzhen, am not the kind of person who can't stand losing. Senior sister Am, your junior brother is very talented, but because your master is in seclusion, he has really wasted his talent in swordsmanship. Although he beat me in swordsmanship. But in the next duel, Ziyun Peaks loses, he will definitely use his cultivation skills. To cleanse the marrow with key refining, it takes extremely strong means. Anyway, you guys take care of yourself." Caillou's sword light fell to his feet, and Lin Yulanzhen flew up on the sword and flew into the distant sky. "Thank you, senior brother," Ling Yunpo shouted at his back. In the distance, Lin Yulanzhen's sword light suddenly dropped half a meter, then flew up shakily, and soon disappeared. "Senior sister." Ling Yunpo turned his head and asked with a smile to take credit, "How did I perform this time?" "You performed very well." Zisu said softly. "Lin Yulanzhen is the eldest senior brother of Jin Gongfen. He is quite insightful in swordsmanship. He can learn many other sword techniques at a glance, so he is extremely arrogant. There are not many disciples in the whole Shushan who are looked up to by him. You were able to learn his swordsmanship in the competition, and you were able to make him admit defeat with all his face. This shows that your talent in swordsmanship must be outstanding." Ling Yunpo knew that senior sister and said this, but was afraid that Lin Yulanzhen's previous words would hit his confidence, so he laughed quickly. "Of course. Humph, he is senior brother Jin Gangfen, but he didn't lose to me in swordsmanship." Seeing his smug look on his face, Zisu was also a little amused. She wanted to reach out and pat his shoulder, but she couldn't help but think of the embarrassing thing that happened that night when she returned injured and was stripped of her clothes and applied medicine by her junior brother. The emotions in her mind became strange, and she awkwardly retracted her half-extended hand. Then she remembered the time when Lu Zixing dropped the sword talisman, and she panicked like a headless fly, and even shed tears. However, the junior brother calmly wiped away her tears for her. At the time, his face did shine with a confident smile of everything is under control, which still remains in Zisu's memory. Although the junior brother is a junior brother, but, after all, he is also someone who can be trusted and relied on. Thinking of this, Zisu suddenly reached out again and grabbed Ling Yunpo's arm. "Let's go, junior brother," she said with a smile. "To celebrate your learning the two-handed sword control technique, senior sister wants to give you a treasure." "What treasure?" Ling Yunpo asked curiously. "A 10th level fairy sword left by the master." Zisu blinked. "All fairy swords are arrogant. In other words, it is easy for fairy swords to produce sword spirits. With sword spirits, they will choose a master, and they will not be so useful. The flying sword left by the 7 Killings Master Sujian is called Thunderbolt, which is a 10th order gold flying sword. It also has its own sword spirit. Because the character of this sword spirit is quite extreme, when Ling Yunpo asked is there a 10th order flying sword in the sword pool, Zisu hesitated for a while, and finally did not tell him about the existence of this immortal sword. In any case, it is too outrageous to let a disciple who has just learned the sword controlling technique try to tame such a difficult sword spirit. What if he is hit too hard and hurts his self-esteem? However, today's duel between Ling Yunpo and Lin Yulanzhen made Zisu realize that his junior brother's talent in swordsmanship is extremely amazing. In addition, because of the manipulation of Kunlun mirror before, his true temperament was leaked, which made senior sister and realize that Ling Yunpo is not just her well-behaved junior brother, he has matured to have his own plans and plots. In this case, why can't you trust him a little more and let him try to refine Thunderbolt? Senior sister. Ling Yunpo's voice interrupted her thoughts. "You just said, what's the problem with this immortal sword?" "Lady Li." Zisu sighed. "It only recognizes immortals as sword masters." "Immortals?" Ling Yunpo looked strange. "How many immortals are there in this world?" "Above the nascent soul stage, there are the legendary immortals. Immortals are extremely rare in this world. Many cultivators have never heard of immortals in their entire lives. But everyone guessed that at least in the 3 pure ones of the Orthodox Church, each sect has a supreme elder at the immortal level. How could they look down on a mediocre 10th level immortal sword like Lei Li? Well, Zisu shook his head, so it still has no sword master. Chapter 39. Subjugating the Thunder Sword is to win people over with virtue. The Kingping sword is 3 feet 6 inches long, black in color, with a green lotus carved on the sword jaw. The Lizzie sword is 3 feet 8 inches long, with a shiny blade, and a golden lion tooth relief on the sword jaw, which looks very majestic and domineering. Well, or in other words, a show-off. Although it is a 10th level immortal sword, it was thrown into the utility room and no one cared about it. It was piled up with other brooms like firewood. Zisu found the dusty Lizzie sword in the corner, picked it up and swung it a few times, wiped the hilt with a handkerchief, and then handed it to Ling Yunpo and said, "Come on, try it. If you can successfully refine it, we don't have to go to the sword pool to get the second sword." Ling Yunpo took the flying sword and tried to connect the key to it. As soon as he touched the sword body, he was immediately bounced back. Along with it, the voice of a very showy middle school boy was transmitted back. "Who wants to refine me? A miscellaneous cultivator. Are you an immortal? Are you worthy?" Ling Yunpo, senior sister. He said seriously, "I don't have much experience dealing with sword spirits, but for a sword spirit like this, I think it can be thrown back into the sword pool and let it fight with other flying swords day and night." The laughter of King Ping's sword and the angry curses of Lady Jin came into his mind, and Zisu was heard laughing. "Junior brother, Lady Jin is a 10th rank immortal sword after all. It's a pity to just throw it into the sword pool like this, isn't it?" Lady Jin breathed a sigh of relief, and continued to sneer in his mind. "Poochie, fortunately this little girl knows what's good, but it's a pity that she hasn't even reached the Jindan level. As for you, a rude miscellaneous cultivator, even if you can really become an immortal, don't even think about subduing me." "Okay, senior sister." Ling Yunpo nodded, "Then I'll take it back and try to refine it." "Yeah." Zisu said with a smile, "Take your time, it's okay." Taking the thunder sword back to the bedroom and placing it on the desk, Ling Yunpo asked, "Jin, King Ping, is there any way to train the sword spirit?" Kumlin Jin was silent for a long time and said, "What do you mean by training?" "It means making it listen to me obediently." Ling Yunpo sneered, "For example, throw it into the pit of the dry toilet?" "You're a human." King Ping's sword shouted in disbelief. As a 10th level immortal sword, there is naturally no need to worry about a small key refining disciple causing any physical damage to it. But being thrown into the pit, the lethality is not high, and the insult is extremely strong. I'm afraid that the Thunder Sword would rather destroy its own sword spirit than retain such a memory. "Let me ask you something, Master Sword Master." King Ping's sword asked cautiously, "If we throw it into that filthy place, even if we force it to surrender, we can't use it anymore, right? After all, it's already such a smelly sword, it doesn't matter." Ling Yunpo said leisurely, "Just wash it. Anyway, you don't need to hold the flying sword in your hand to use it. Even if it stinks, it will only stink others. I don't mind." King Ping's sword. It wanted to say "but I mind," but it knew that this cold sword master would definitely not care about its senses. So after thinking for a while, King Ping's sword said flatteringly again, "Master Sword Master, how about letting me try?" "You?" Ling Yunpo said lazily, "How do you want to try?" In the previous sparring with Lin Yuanzhen, he knew that this King Ping sword was not an ordinary fairy sword, he had to take the initiative to squeeze its value. "I can convince it." King Ping's sword said flatteringly. "How to convince?" Ling Yunpo just said one sentence, and suddenly asked cautiously, "Wait, isn't it a beauty trap?" "Look at what the Lord Sword Master said." King Ping's sword laughed, "For us sword spirits, there is only the gender we recognize, but there is no natural male and female, so how can there be a beauty trap, a beautiful sword trap? Besides, since I serve the Lord Sword Master as my master, I will be the Lord Sword Master's immortal sword in my life and the Lord Sword Master's broken sword in my death. How can I flatter another sword? Okay. Ling Yunpo also felt that he seemed to think too much, and he seemed to be forcing himself to find a cuckold. "Then I'll leave it to you, King Ping. Don't let me down." He also put the King Ping sword on the desk, and walked out slowly with his hands behind his back. Fantai, what do you want to do?" Lady Jian, who was lying on the table, asked arrogantly. The next second, a very terrifying aura arose from the King Ping sword next to him. Ling Yunpo had nothing to do, so he walked around the top of King Luo Peak for a while. The Shushan Peaks are located in the land of heaven, with beautiful scenery. Although the scenery is not as magnificent as the Kumlin Snow Peak, it has a unique, exquisite and beautiful taste. Trees and vines, clusters of flowers, mountain streams, birds flying and insects chirping, all of which are natural scenery full of vitality. At the stream behind the view, Ling Yunpo saw 2 lines of poetry carved on a stone wall next to it, as if they were cut by a knife and chiseled. "The eternity of the world will end, but this hatred will never end. Ling Yunpo. Looking at the handwriting, it doesn't look like it was written by senior sister Anne. But his chief master, Su Jian, the Seven Killings formation, is said to be obsessed with swordsmanship all his life, and it is unlikely that he would have such lingering emotions. Well, I just don't know which senior left it. After a round outside, Ling Yunpo returned to the wing room again, and saw that the 2 10th level immortal swords were still lying quietly on the table. Ling Yunpo carried the Kingping sword and picked up the Li Zi sword, and connected his aura to it. Lady Li's sword didn't resist at all, which made him a little confused. So he tried to communicate with it. Lady Li, I'm here. Lady Li's sword said flatteringly, Master Sword Master, what's the matter with you calling me? Ling Yunpo. He wanted to show a black question mark expression, but considering that there were no spectators around him at this time, he asked patiently again. Kingping, what did it say to you? Master Sword Master. Lady Li's sword said respectfully, Your Majesty taught me a lot of truths, such as good birds choose trees to roost, and wise swords choose masters to be sharp. For example, a sword can have pride, but it can't be arrogant. Stop. Ling Yunpo shouted to stop, interrupting its nagging. What the hell is Your Majesty? Your Majesty. Kingping considers herself the Queen of Swords, so I call it Your Majesty. Lady Li's sword said with a smile. Then what is your gender? I don't have a gender for now. Lady Jian said quickly, Sword Master likes girls, so I am a beautiful young lady. If he likes men, I'm a beautiful bunny. The voice can also be converted accordingly. Go away. Ling Yunpo scolded angrily, what do you mean by men? From today on, speak in the voice of a little girl. May I ask, Master Sword Master, this little girl is a little girl of 13 or 14 years old. I obey your command. Lady Jian began to pronounce, and his voice gradually became sharp and crisp. Finally, it successfully turned into a silver bell-like, milky girl's voice. Master Sword Master, is this okay? HMPH, let's do it this way. Ling Yunpo said coldly. He carried Kingping on his back, held Lady Jian upside down, walked out of his room calmly, turned around and came to Senior Sister Anne's door and knocked on it. Senior Sister Anne. He said in a deep voice with a smile in his tone, I have tamed the Thunder Sword. Really? Zisu heard the voice and hurried over to open the door for him. Looking at the Thunder Sword in his hand, he asked in surprise, how did you tame it? Of course, I tame people with virtue. Ling Yunpo said sternly. Chapter 40. Sword fighting is the specialty of Shushan. You have to try it. After subduing the Thunder Sword with his outstanding personality and charm, Ling Yunpo stayed in King Luo Peak and concentrated on practicing two-handed sword control with Senior Sister Anne. Occasionally, he would read the game and go to Kyo Chang's Island to practice how to cast the Jade Pivot Thunder more secretly. Or he would go to Penglai to listen to the classes Luoyan, deal with Mishi, and brush up the synchronization value. Time passed like this, and finally it was the day of the sword duel. At noon, sword lights had already descended on the top of the Golden Palace peak of Shushan Mountain. Most people came to watch the sword duel, while some were friends with Xiun Peak or had grudges with King Luo Peak. Each of them had their own ulterior motives. Lu Zixing stood on the south side of the sword duel field, with his sword on his back and his hands behind his back, looking aloof. After a while, two sword lights landed on the north side, which were Ling Yunpo and Zisu. Since we are here, before the sword duel begins, you can tell us anything you have to say. Lu Zixing said. His voice was so loud and full of energy that it actually made the air above the peak buzz. The disciples in the foundation building realm around him exclaimed, could this person really have entered the marrow cleansing stage? Regardless of the previous rumors, in the eyes of most Shushan disciples, sword fighting should be fair and square, and the victory should be honorable and the defeat should be upright. Such tricks as deliberately asking for a sword fight with the same level and then forcing a breakthrough on the spot are always despised by people. Now that Lu Zixing really broke through the marrow cleansing stage with the help of the secret method as rumored, they all booed enthusiastically. TSK, strategy is also a part of sword fighting, what do you stupid people know? Lu Zixing didn't care at all, just folded his arms and sneered. Using the secret method of purple key gathering to break through by force will also greatly damage his future cultivation. Since he has paid such a price, he must beat Ling Yunpo to death this time, no matter how much damage he does to his bones. Until Zisu couldn't bear it anymore and was willing to offer his sword in exchange for the Spirit Stone, he could just accept it, and then defeat Ling Yunpo and let him go. In this way, the plan is perfect and flawless. The only regret is that there are no senior brothers from Xiun Peak to watch. If there is a Jin and Shinran standing on the sidelines, how can so many spectators dare to bother me? Listening to the boos from outside the field, Lu Zixing's eyes twitched, and he secretly held back his anger, silently pinching the magic formula in his hands. That guy doesn't seem to be very popular. Ling Yunpo said. Don't worry about other people's comments. Zisu smiled and said, just fight with your heart. When Ling Yunpo stood still in the field, the people around him burst into a loud boo. The viciousness of the various curses and the sharpness of the scolding really scared him. Is this the new disciple of King Luo Peak? How could he be so blind as to want to join the evil place of King Luo Peak? Is he the junior brother of the sword-cutting immortal? I heard that he is only at the key refining stage. I think he will definitely die this time. Ha ha ha, no matter which side is seriously injured or dies tragically this time, it will be a happy thing. After the sword fight, I will treat everyone to a drink. I just said that the other party has a bad reputation, but I didn't expect that my reputation is not so good either, Ling Yunpo thought to himself. As for why this is the case, he has roughly inquired about it during the period before the sword fight. It is said that his chief master Su Jian was originally a big killer in Shushan. There are countless fellow masters and elders who died in the sword fight. But later, because of the closed-door retreat, he faded out of the sight of Shushan. And his senior sister Nzesu, although she is gentle and considerate, is a little killer in the eyes of outsiders. There were even rumors that she would smile and chop people with her sword when there was a slight conflict. However, she was very strong, and there were no more than 100 disciples of the same level who could stop her. If it weren't for the rule that Shushan couldn't fight with swords across levels, a Jin and Shinran would have rushed to kill her 17 or 18 times. The old and the young of King Luo Peak had long oppressed the other peaks of Shushan and many of their fellow disciples, so that the reputation of the King Luo Peak lineage in Shushan was almost second only to the people of the demon sect. From this point of view, as a disciple of King Luo Peak, it is easy to imagine how much discrimination and criticism Ling Yunpo would face in the outside world in the future. Before the sword fight began, there was a murmur of angry curses all around. They cursed Lu Zixing for using any means and the shame of Shushan. They cursed Ling Yunpo for being a disciple of a killer star and dying as soon as possible. Their verbal firepower was comparable to that of a 9th level flying sword, and they almost wanted to skin the two people alive in public. Zisu stood at the sidelines, her eyebrows slightly furrowed, and it was obvious that she could not hide her worry. Although the junior brother was very strong, it was the first time for him to see such an away game. Would he feel any psychological pressure? She thought about it and became more and more worried. When she saw the disciple next to her, she felt a little happy. This disciple also had a grudge against King Luo Peak. The senior sister he loved had challenged Nzesu, but her life sword was broken, and her cultivation was greatly damaged. She never recovered and asked to leave Shushan 6 years ago. He usually didn't dare to provoke King Luo Peak, but seeing Ling Yunpo being attacked by public opinion and Nzesu looking depressed, he plucked up his courage, came over and ridiculed him. Senior sister Am, I didn't expect that you from King Luo Peak are so obsessed with sword fighting. You can even do such a feat as a key refining stage challenging a mirror washing stage. TSK, senior sister, you have been enjoying sword fighting all your life, but you have made mistakes sometimes. Now you have to collect the body of your junior brother. Zisu smiled faintly, and said, sword fighting is a means for sword immortals like me to break through. Only when we are on the line between life and death can we have the opportunity to achieve enlightenment. By the way, you seem to be a disciple of Qizu Peak. I wonder if your senior brother Jin from the Wafu stage has recovered from the injury from the last sword fighting. If he has, please let him know. Senior sister will come to you for advice again in a while. The disciple just sneered at first, but when he heard the words asking for advice, his face suddenly changed, and his heart skipped a beat. Originally, he just wanted to have a good time, but he didn't expect that it would bring disaster to his family. If Ling Yunpo died in the sword fight, this Shaxing would come to ask for advice in anger, and senior brother Jin would be chopped half of his life by her. Looking at the surrounding sidelines, let alone Ziyun Peak, not a single waffle level disciple from the entire Shushan dared to come. They must be afraid that Ling Yunpo would die unfortunately, and Shaxing would go crazy on the spot and find someone to fight with to vent his anger, so they all hid long ago. The more he thought about it, the more frightened he became. He had to muster up his remaining courage again, and humbly said a few words of submission to Nzesu. Seeing him so timid, Nzesu couldn't help laughing, so she smiled and comforted him with a few words. The disciple's face became more and more wrong after hearing this, thinking that this mowing sword fairy was really vicious, and he actually played the trick of hiding a knife in a joke. He could only find an excuse to leave immediately, and took the opportunity to fly back to Quizu Peak and told his senior brother Jin about this. As a result, senior brother Jin was shocked, scolded him severely, and immediately flew away from Shushan overnight and hid outside for refuge. Chapter 41. The immortal sword is electrified, so it is reasonable for the enemy to be killed by lightning. At the sidelines of the duel, everyone was cursing in a low voice, and they secretly glanced at Nzisu while cursing. Seeing that her face was not smiling, but rather had a faint look of worry, he couldn't help but panic. This sword-cutting immortal usually smiles, and he would cut people whenever he smiles. Now, not only is his face not smiling, but there is a little sadness on it. Could it be that he plans to slaughter all of Shushan afterwards? This uneasy atmosphere spread invisibly among the audience on the sidelines, and soon covered up the curses. The supervisor at this duel had actually arrived a long time ago, and was flying his sword high in the sky, looking calm and composed. He also had a personal grudge against Sujian. Now, when he heard the people below using all kinds of dirty words and madly cursing Sujian and his disciples, he deliberately delayed the duel and just closed his eyes and listened with joy. Thinking of how Sujian would look like if he heard these slanders, he suddenly felt even more satisfied. Suddenly, the curses died down, and he opened his eyes with some dissatisfaction. Seeing that everyone was carefully glancing at Nzisu's face, he couldn't help but sigh, thinking that Shushan was really declining, and the older and younger generations were suppressed by King Luo Peak. At the same time, he also secretly decided that he would deliberately not call a halt to this fight, so that the disciple surnamed Ling would be beaten half to death, so as to avoid another killer in Shushan in the future. Of course, if Ziyun Peaks loses he missed and killed Ling Yunpa directly, it would be even better. Thinking of this, he raised his hand and made a sound of arrows, announcing the start of the fight. The sound of arrows started. Lu Zixing immediately raised his hand, and several streams of light shot out from his fingers. Ling Yunpo's eyes were stern, and he immediately recognized what the move was. Talisman bombing. Lu Zixing's starting move was actually the talisman bombing commonly used by Yuking temple monks. The first purple light rushed towards him. This was the Thunder Talisman. He thrust forward with his right hand, and the Kingping sword split the low-altitude thunderbolts. Immediately, another red light flashed before his eyes. Flame Rush Talisman. Ling Yunpo's mind turned rapidly, and the Kingping sword slashed forward towards the red light again, while his feet retreated calmly, just avoiding the range of the flame explosion. The third Ice Rain Talisman exploded above his head, turning into countless ice cones that stabbed straight down. Ling Yunpo waved his sleeves to summon the Thunder Sword, and the brilliant sword light suddenly spun and shattered all the ice cones above. How can the talisman bombardment be used like this? He sneered in his heart. The so-called talisman bombardment is to take advantage of the talisman's fast activation, unlimited number of times, and no need for true energy, and to send out countless talismans at once, leaving the opponent with no way to avoid it. Like Lu Zixing, sending out one by one as a thrifty, it is simply a waste of the power of this move. He put himself in Luo Yan's shoes and mocked him, then turned back to Ling Yunpo and retreated again, slashing the red light with his sword while avoiding the flame explosion of the Yanchong talisman. If this is all you can do, don't try again in vain. Ling Yunpo said coldly, this kind of attack is full of flaws. It's a waste of my time. Of course it's not just that. Lu Zixing laughed wickedly. Ling Yunpo suddenly felt something was wrong and was about to react, but his body suddenly sank down. It turned out that the stone ground under his feet turned into quicksand, and he was sinking continuously. Seeing that he struggled hard but couldn't get out, and was still sinking deeper and deeper, Lu Zixing laughed arrogantly. Before, I used the Ice Rain Talisman to deliberately shoot into the air to attract your attention, just to bury the quicksand net behind you. Junior brother Lin, how does this trap taste? Ling Yunpo ignored him, just letting his body sink, thinking quickly in his mind. If it were any other cultivator, he might have to admit defeat. But Luo Yan, who had attended so many classes at Tiangong Workshop, knew that the small formation of the quicksand net was not unsolvable. On the basis of similar cultivation, a large amount of water essence could be used to disrupt the operation of the formation. In the Shushan arena, Lu Zixing looked at Ling Yunpo, who was sinking continuously in the quicksand, with a mocking and pitying look. The people on the sidelines also had different expressions. Some were surprised that Lu Zixing was so desperate, and some lamented that Ling Yunpo was too weak and was killed before the opponent even used a sword. Zisu stood calmly on the sidelines, with a calm expression on her face. But no one saw her hands gathered in her sleeves, her 10 fingers tightly clasped together, and her knuckles were clenched white. The mist is ethereal, and the mirage is floating in the smoke. In the sight of the people outside the arena, Ling Yunpo's lips moved slightly and silently chanted the spell. The first forbidden method on the Kingping sword, the green mist covers the Kanshan Mountains, was activated, and in an instant, boundless fog emerged out of thin air, instantly covering the entire arena. Everyone was trapped in the thick fog, and they couldn't see their hands in front of them. They had to shout loudly. In the sky, the supervisor looked down from afar, his eyes thoughtful. Water-based forbidden magic. That kid's fairy sword has a background. In the arena, Lu Zixing's smile stopped abruptly, and he was dumbfounded. This fog must have been caused by Ling Yunpo. Now it's impossible to see clearly a few steps away, and I don't know how he is. No. Could it be that he has a trick up his sleeve? Thinking of this, he immediately raised his hand again and shot out the remaining 3 Ensong talismans, aiming at the center of the quicksand in his memory. The fire wave exploded, but it was like a raging fire being poured with cold water, and it dissipated with a bang. It turned out that in this fog, all non-water-based spells were affected by the forbidden magic, and their power was halved. And the 6 senses were also blocked, and the sight, hearing, and consciousness were all severely restricted. Lu Zixing didn't know it at all, but he couldn't hear the explosion, and was shocked, thinking that the 3 talismans he bought were defective products. Realizing that the talisman was ineffective, he quickly slapped the flying sword beside him and activated its derivative Taoist method Golden Light Shield. This Golden Light Shield is a pure defensive spell, which just suits his cowardly nature. With this Taoist method as a guarantee, the opponent is only at the level of Ki refining, and I think he will definitely not be able to break my defensa. He hid in the Golden Light Shield, and his mind was also very well calculated. When the opponent failed to attack repeatedly, the fog would naturally dissipate, and he would break out of the shell and return all the previous grievances. However, he didn't know that Ling Yunpo had already used the fog to cover and quietly went around behind him, facing the Golden Light Shield with his palm, and chanted the spell in his heart again. Thunder and fire text, Jake Pivot Divine Thunder, break. Then lightning surged from his palm, its light was green and its color was red, silent, and suddenly hit the Golden Light Shield. Even in this fog, when the power of all non-water-based Taoist magic was halved, it still pierced through Lu Zixing and the body inside. The fog gradually dissipated, and Lu Zixing's body had already fallen to the ground, with a bloody hole on his back. The thunder sword was inserted into the pool of blood beside him, with electric snakes dancing on it, ferocious and hideous. It turned out to be, Lu Zixing opened his lips slightly. Before he could say the word thunder magic, the dizziness from blood loss quickly hit him. His body suddenly spasmed and twitched several times, and soon he lost his breath. Ling Yunpo stood in silence, pretending to wave his hand lightly, and the thunder sword flew back to his side from the side of Lu Zixing's body. The sword was still smooth, without a trace of blood. Chapter 42. They are all senior sisters, learn from them. At this time, the fog had dissipated, and the 2 people on the field, one falling and the other standing, had obviously already decided the winner. Immediately, someone screamed, "How is it possible? A Ki refining stage versus Marrow washing stage, can he win? Could it be that Ling Yunpo has hidden some super-level magic weapon on him? Are you crazy? His master Su Jian has been in seclusion for a long time, how could he give him a super-level magic weapon? Whether there is a magic weapon or not, he must have cheated in this competition. Otherwise, why did he create a thick fog before? He must be afraid that we can see through it. Although there is no evidence, we agree. The gap between Ki refining and marrow washing is too big. If he can win without cheating, what is the meaning of the division of cultivation realms? This competition is blatantly cheated, it must be invalid. We bet spirit stones on him to lose before, and we can't let this account go. The shouts of the sword cultivators were louder and louder, each of them was filled with righteous indignation and anger. Ling Yunpo stood in the center of the competition field, listening to the unanimous condemnation of the crowd outside the field, and laughed in his heart. What if this result doesn't count? Now that he's dead and I'm alive, can you still reverse it? Ling Yunpo folded his arms, his mouth slightly raised, and he looked like he didn't want to argue anymore. The onlookers saw this and were furious, wishing to drown him with righteous spit. Until the supervisor elder came down slowly with a sword light. The crowd stopped talking in embarrassment, and just looked at the elder, his eyes clearly saying, "Elder, please do justice for us." The elder had a cold face, his consciousness swept over Lu Zixing's body, sighed, and announced the winner of this duel. The result of this duel. King Luo Peak disciple Ling Yunpo won. According to the duel rules, the deceased Ziyun Peak disciple Lu Zixing took the initiative to challenge the party, so the relevant matters will not be pursued. That's all. The supervisor elder flicked his robe sleeves, too lazy to pay attention to the people below, and turned into a stream of light and left. What a crude plan, he thought to himself. However, although he did not seize the immortal sword, it seems that Elder Mingwu has used this abandoned pawn to test out another thing. The 7 Killings Master Su Jian is still trapped in the Death Pass. I'm afraid that he is really in danger. At first, the people outside the field still cursed, but they were afraid of the majesty of the supervisory elder and did not dare to curse loudly. But gradually, some people noticed what the elder had just said, and their expressions became stiff and they were stunned. The entire peak was in an awkward silence. Only Nzisu came over and patted Ling Yunpo on the shoulder gently. Beautiful fight. Senior sister. Ling Yunpo nodded slightly. I won. Okay. Nzisu smiled softly. Let's go back. She took Ling Yunpo's hand, waved her sleeves to drive the sword light, and flew away with him. After returning to King Luo Peak, Ling Yunpo went to rest first, while Nzisu went deep into the Taoist temple, walked down the steps, passed through the outer hall, corridor, inner room, and secret room of King Luo Peak, and entered the mountain of King Luo Peak. Finally, she stopped in front of a stone wall. There was a sword mark on the stone door, as if it was newly chiseled, and murderous aura was overflowing. Nzisu knelt down in front of the sword mark and whispered, Susu greets Master. I wonder how Master is doing after being in seclusion for so long. Junior brother Lin, today we finally won the battle with Ziyun Peak. If Master knew about this, he would be proud of him. I gave the thunder sword that Master left to me to junior brother Lin. He successfully subdued the thunder sword. Junior brother Lin has the potential to become an outstanding sword fairy. I will definitely protect him. When Nzisu said this, she bowed down again. After a long while, she stood up again, her eyes firm and unwavering. I, and junior brother Lin. We will definitely maintain the King Luo Peak glorious tradition. Definitely. Point 3. Pengliu King Temple, Dormitory. Character Identity. Luo Yan. Mirror Flower Water Moon Template overwritten, currently traveling through time and space. Luo Yan has been very busy recently. On the one hand, Elder Shiding has appointed him to learn the art of casting the tripod, so he is studying formations hard recently, and has a lot of Kim and Anjia knowledge to learn. On the other hand, Shilli comes to bother him every day, asking him to call her senior sister. Although Luo Yan does need to brush up the synchronization value, and although this young lady is not stupid, she should have been protected too well since childhood, and her social experience is almost equal to naught, so it is easy to brush up the synchronization value on her. But it's not okay for him to come to me from morning to night. Her persistence even made Luo Yan feel like he was dreaming of Qiu Chang's iron. He couldn't help but think of the time when he first entered the sect and was pursued by junior sisters Yu Yin and Yan. Don't I want to practice? However, Qiu Chang's iron could bully and abuse Zhu Ying or Yan in various ways, but Luo Yan couldn't do the same to Xi Luli, because she was the only beloved daughter of Elder Shiding and the most beloved junior sister in the entire Tiangong workshop. Anyone who offended Shilili would not be able to stay in Pengliu King Temple. Junior brother, junior brother. He was a little distracted when Shilili rushed in from outside and said excitedly, hurry up, help me look up a place name. Noun. Luo Yan showed just the right amount of confusion and wry smile. Shilili just remembered that he didn't know anything about it, and hurriedly chirped. The matter is not complicated. Miss Shilili has been practicing in the key refining stage for several years. She feels that it will take a long time to fill the Qi, but she is impatient to continue to practice Qi refining, so she went to pester Elder Shiding and asked if there was any way to quickly enter the marrow washing stage. Elder Shiding taught her earnestly that this practice is like eating, and you have to eat one bite at a time, and practice should also be done step by step. It is not good to be too ambitious. This is definitely a mature and prudent statement, but it is clear that Miss Shi will not listen. So she went to pester their senior brothers and sisters again, asking if there is any way to speed up the practice. Everyone said in unison, this practice is like eating. In short, it was just a reciprocal statement, which made Miss Shi lose her temper. In the end, it was still the eldest brother Ling Yushu who couldn't help but let it slip, and said half a sentence, anyway, the palace will be opened soon. Although the second half of the sentence was stopped in time, it was still keenly remembered by Shiluli. Li Palace. Luoyan also began to think. Palace is obviously a palace. Li is most likely the Li in Bagya. The Book of Changes. Explanation of trigrams says, Li represents fire, sun, lightning, middle woman, armor, and spears. Therefore, Li Palace is likely to be a palace built in a special environment, such as a palace full of flames, sun rays, thunder and lightning, etc. Seeing Luoyan hesitate and not answer, Shiluli immediately got angry and grabbed his shoulders and shook him hard. Will you help me? Will you help me? Will you help me? Will you help me? Help. Luoyan was almost shaken apart by her. I will definitely help. Senior sister's business is my business. Hypocritical personality, synchronization value +1. Start entering the Li Palace line. Chapter 43. Can it be considered cultivation if you don't skip a level? Penglayu King Temple, Dozan Pavilion. Luoyan looked up from the pile of books, his expression a little dazed. After flipping through hundreds of scriptures, he still couldn't find any relevant information about the Li Palace. The only place he saw was in the general history of ancient teachings, which said Tianzun was worried and began to build a Li Palace. So who is Tianzun? What are you worried about? Why do you have to build a Li Palace when you're worried? What is a Li Palace? Looking at the name of the author of this scripture again, well, it turns out to be a senior from ancient Kunlin. All scriptures from Kunlin Tai King sect are always in this hateful minimalist style. If you can describe it with one word, never use two words, as if writing one more word will lower the style. If you want to use fewer words and pay attention to style, why don't you make a PPT? Can you come up with some clear charts? Luoyan showed this text to Shiluli, and Miss Xu was scratching her head. Tianzun, it should refer to the leader of the sect, Yuanzi Tianzun. Shiluli speculated. As for this worry, wait a minute. Luoyan said with a smile, Sister, if it was really built by Yuanzi Tianzun, then the rank of this palace would be terrifyingly high. It should not be related to Oki refining stage. What you said makes sense. Shiluli said distressedly, so who is this Tianzun? Let's not care who this Tianzun is for now. Luoyan tried to persuade the eldest lady, but the scriptures in the Taoist canon are so vast, and finding a special term in it is like looking for a needle in a haystack. I think it's better to get the eldest brother drunk, and then get words from him. Do you think I haven't tried it? Shiluli glanced at him. He has been wary of me recently, and he carries hangover pills with him. How strange. Luoyan said thoughtfully, is this a secret worth keeping secret by everyone? The secret may not be a secret. Shiluli replied, it's just that the senior brothers and sisters all listen to my father. My father may have just said something casually, don't tell me directly, and they all refused to tell me. Is that so? Luoyan thought about it for a moment and made up his mind. Asking for help from the audience outside the venue. I'm going to the toilet. He stood up and said. You are not allowed to go. Shiluli said angrily. Senior sister. You can't even go to the toilet, isn't that too overbearing? Luoyan said with a bitter face. Do you think I'm a fool? Shiluli said with her hands on her hips, as a cultivator of the key refining stage, you have already practiced fasting, why do you still need to go to the toilet? Luoyan. This young lady suddenly became smart again. See, you clearly want to escape. Shiluli shouted angrily. Senior sister. Luoyan said helplessly, in fact, I already have an inspiration, I just plan to go to the toilet to sort it out. What inspiration should be sorted out in the toilet? Shiluli sneered. Calculation. Luoyan lead. Can't the calculation be calculated here? No. Why? Senior sister is too beautiful to distract me, and I can't concentrate on calculating. Shiluli. Oh, I really can't do anything with you. She waved her hand with a smile, what toilet? We don't have that kind of filthy place in Tiangongfang. There is a quiet room in the Dozan Pavilion. You can go there to calculate, but you are not allowed to run away. Okay. Luoyan got up and said hurriedly. After arriving in the quiet room and confirming that there was no one around, he called Kunlun Mirror in his mind. Yo, I want to reload the file. Kunlun Mirror ignored him. A jinn? Luoyan immediately changed his words. Which file to reload? Kunlun Mirror asked. Kunlun. Point 1. Kunlun Tai King Sect, Jinline Cave Mansion. Character identity. Kyo Chain Taiyan. Mirror Flower Water Moon template overwritten. In the process of time and space shuttle, the body appeared in Kunlun again, and at the same time was subjected to the invincible mirror flower water moon illusion. He quickly switched to Qiu Chang Time's psychological state, left the cave calmly, and flew up on the sword. Prepared to visit Zhu Changqing, the chief of the Foundation building period. Zhu Changqing, born in the Zhu family of Tianan, is the 276th generation chief disciple of Kunlun. He is now the chief of the Foundation building period and the number one person under the golden elixir of Kunlun Tai King sect. By the way, the number one person under the golden elixir of Shushan Shang King sect is senior sister Nzisu. There is no need to say much about the relationship between Ling Yunpo and Nzisu, and the relationship between Qiu Chang Time and Zhu Changqing is actually not much different. The reason is very simple. In the genealogy of the Zhu family of Tianan, Zhu Changqing is the great-great-grandfather of Zhu Yinlian, that is, the uncle of grandfather. In other words, according to the Taoist couple marriage contract that has been made, Qiu Chang Time is Zhu Changqing's prospective great-nephew-in-law. Although this title is a bit confusing, Zhu Changqing does regard Qiu Chang Time as his own junior because of this relationship. Chang Tian. Seeing Qiu Chang Time coming to visit, Zhu Changqing, who was meditating, stood up to greet him. His appearance is maintained at about 30 years old. He has neither the immature breath of a young man nor the vicissitudes of a middle-aged man. It can be said that his appearance has no characteristics. He was also very low-key in his daily life, which made Qiu Chang Time very envious. Why wouldn't he want to be like that? It's just that his character doesn't allow it. Brother Changqing. Qiu Chang Time bowed respectfully, and then asked directly, Chang Time came here to ask you about a place. What place? Zhu Changqing was a little surprised. Li Palace. Qiu Chang Time said in a deep voice. Zhu Changqing blinked, then smiled. Is that so? I didn't expect you to hear the news in advance. Qiu Chang Tian. How come this Li Palace is related to me, Qiu Chang Tian? Seeing that his expression did not change, Zhu Changqing thought for a moment and then explained the relationship. Chang Tian, you also know that the practice of Qi refining stage is mainly to draw Qi into the body and fill the Qi. The bone refining and marrow cutting and meridian expansion in the marrow cleansing stage require a lot of Qi to assist, which requires you to have a full Qi. Generally speaking, depending on the individual qualifications of the cultivator and the quality of Qi refining technique, it takes about 30 to 60 years to fill the Qi. During this period, without the help of external objects such as flying swords and magic weapons, the combat capability of Qi refining stage cultivators is very fragile. In ancient times, the then sect faced another problem, that is, the number of low-level disciples was far less than that of the Jie sect. Although the average qualifications were higher, because of the low level of cultivation, they could not widen the gap with the Jie sect disciples. Therefore, in ancient times, there were great men in the sect who displayed supreme magical powers and built a secret palace under the East China Sea with the majestic spiritual power of the earth veins and volcanoes. This Li Palace secret realm is designed specifically for the trials of the Foundation building disciples of the sect. As long as you can pass the trial, you will not only have the opportunity to obtain flying swords, magic weapons, elixirs, and Taoist methods, but you can also steadily raise your cultivation realm by one level. Qi refining to cleanse the marrow to the Transformation Palace, jump directly from the beginning of the Transformation Palace to the great perfection of the Transformation Palace, and the realm of half-step golden elixir can all be achieved through the Li Palace secret realm. Qiu Chang Time suddenly realized. So that's how it is, then this Li Palace, the opening and closing time of the Li Palace is beyond our ability to predict. Zhu Changqing said with a smile, but according to Master, the next opening should be soon. The reason why the sect didn't explain it to you was that they're afraid that you will know that the Li Palace secret realm can guarantee promotion, so you'll slack off in your cultivation. But since you have already found out about it, I will no longer hide it from you. Qiu Chang Time certainly understood what he meant, and nodded seriously and said, Brother, don't worry, I won't tell my junior brothers and sisters about this matter, not even junior sister Zhu. But how should I talk to Miss Shi? Chapter 44. Miss Shi's IQ reducing halo. In the Sutra Library of Yu King Temple in Penglai, Luo Yan finally thought of his words and explained them to Shi Lili in a long speech. There are different levels of cultivation, and each level has its own special significance. The Qi refining level refers to the process from opening up that Qi to completely filling the Qi, which requires a lot of time to draw Qi into the body for refining. The marrow washing level refers to the process of passing the true ki into the limbs and bones, washing the meridians, and refining the bones and marrow after the ki is filled. This stage can greatly enhance the physical fitness of the cultivator and extend his life to about 200 years. The palace transformation level refers to transforming the dantan around the ki into the purple palace, and condensing the true ki and the ki into the true essence, thus laying a good foundation for the subsequent ki true essence dan. In general, the ki refining level takes the longest time, ranging from more than 30 years to more than 60 years. The marrow washing level takes the shortest time, and it can usually be completed in less than 10 years. As the most critical foundation building step, the palace transformation level is very flexible in terms of time. Theoretically, it only takes an average of 5 years to build a purple mansion, and the remaining time is just to further improve the purple mansion and purify the true essence. But if the latter is omitted, and the elixir is formed right after the purple mansion is built, it is almost 100% impossible to withstand the elixir formation tribulation. The elixir is divided into 9 grades, with clear advantages and disadvantages. For those who are less than 100 years old at the transformation stage, even if they can withstand the elixir formation tribulation, the highest golden elixir formed is only the lower 7th grade. This thing will definitely not be able to form an infant in the future, which is equivalent to locking the lifespan. So everyone invests as much time as they can in the transformation stage, so what do you want to say? Shilui said impatiently. Luoyan smiled slightly and said, Sister, that's why some people will definitely want to skip the ki refining stage and go through the marrow washing stage as soon as possible, so as to save more time to go to the transformation palace and improve the quality of the final dan formation as much as possible. If my calculations and analysis are correct, this Li Palace should be a secret realm that allows people to jump from ki refining to marrow washing stage, or directly enter the transformation palace from marrow washing stage. In this way, it makes sense why senior brother said the word slip of the tongue. Your guess makes some sense. Shilui thought carefully and it did make sense, so she looked at him in surprise and said, I didn't expect that junior brother is so smart. I'm not smart, I'm just used to thinking a few steps ahead of others. Luoyan immediately said modestly, and his squinting expression looked extremely harmless. Hypocritical personality, synchronization value +1. Really? Shilui said naively, never mind, I'll use your conclusion first, and then try to get senior brother's words. After that, she got up and ran away excitedly. Luoyan looked at her back, his narrowed eyes just covering up the brilliance in them. Miss she is not stupid, she even knows how to say something in a flattering way. She is smart, indeed innocent and simple and cute. She is indeed a good fat sheep, well, I mean, a cute young lady. After sending Shilui away, Luoyan returned to the workshop and continued to refine the art of making the cauldron and complete the homework assigned to him by Elder Shiding. The so-called cauldron is a bronze vessel with 3 legs and 2 ears. It was originally a cooking utensil for cooking meat, and later evolved into a magical instrument for setting up a formation. There are records in myths and legends that in the past, the ground veins cracked and connected directly to the 9 springs, and countless ghosts broke into the world from the netherworld. In the end, Shannon mined the gold of the 9 states to cast the 9 cauldrons, and set up the world formation, using the 9 cauldrons to suppress the 9 states, and then separated the netherworld and the human world again. The Shannon thing here is an innate spiritual treasure of the same level as the Muay stone and the Fuxia sword, used to suppress the center of the 9 states formation. This time, the assignment that Elder Shiding gave Luoyan was the quicksand net that Lu Zixing had used before, a kind of portable tripod used to trap enemies. First, you need to cast a small tripod, the size of a palm. The bottom needs to be square and the mouth needs to be round, which is round like the sky, square like the earth, shaped like a pot, like a human body. Then cut out 3 layers from top to bottom, symbolizing the upper, middle and lower dantan. Finally, engrave the formation in it. The lower part is the upper part. Carefully draw the line, and steadily infuse spiritual power. In this way, the tripod is completed. Luoyan let out a long breath and began to look at the tripod in his hand. This thing is called the quicksand net. After activating it and throwing it on the ground, the tripod will sink into the soil and immediately form a 9-foot formation area around it. Once falling into the area, the enemy will continue to sink and be trapped, as if the ground has become a quagmire and can no longer move. Of course, as a very low-level formation, the weakness of the quicksand net is the water system. Shang says, if there is no water in the marsh, it will be trapped. If the quicksand net encounters water-based Taoist magic, The water under the marsh formation will be reversed, and the ability to trap people will be broken. After reviewing the production process again, Luoyang confirmed that there was really nothing that could be improved on this thing. After all, it was the talent of one hearing, 1,000 understandings that was added. All kinds of scriptures were understood at a glance and remembered at a glance. It was naturally not difficult to make this kind of low-level tripod perfect at one time. Well, in this way, we can make a few tripods and give them to Qiu Changtai and Lin Yunpo, so that they can carry them with them. Taking them out for self-defense at critical moments is also an extra trump card. Just as Luoyang began to silently calculate what kind of tripod formation was needed for Qiu Changtai and Lin Yunpo's combat system, he heard Shilili's excited voice from a distance. Junior brother. Junior brother. Senior brother admitted it. There is indeed such a palace, just as we guessed. Oh. Luoyang said very calmly. Of course, under the illusion of a hypocritical person, this calmness gives people the feeling of being as stupid as Guo Jing. Task 2. Task 2. Shilili rushed into the workshop, grabbed his shoulders and shook him. Help me find out what secrets there are in the palace, and how to pass the trial. Luoyang. So I am neither Doraemon nor an encyclopedia. Miss, you come to me for all your questions. Don't you think too highly of me? Do you think that the palace is built in flames? Shilili sat on his desk carelessly and guessed, so do we need to prepare some fireproof instruments? Well, it's very likely. Luoyang thought to himself that according to Zhu Chengqing, the palace used the spiritual power of the underwater volcano, so there must be some fire levels. When will the Lyco meeting be held? Shilili asked again. Next month. At the end of the year? Next year. Luoyang thought for a long time after hearing this, and then under Shilili's expectant gaze, he slowly said, I think I should ask the senior brother about this. Stupid. Shilili patted his head. If the senior brother would answer so honestly, why would I come to you? So in the heart of the senior sister, I'm just the senior brother's spare tire. Luoyang immediately acted sad. Hypocritical personality, synchronization value +1. Ah, I didn't mean that. Shilili immediately felt embarrassed and explained quickly, no, junior brother. Because the senior brothers and sisters know the answer, and my father told them not to answer, so I came to you for help. You'll definitely help the senior sister, right? She leaned her pretty face over, blinked her big eyes and looked at Luoyang, put her hands together in front of her chest and shook them back and forth desperately, making an expression of please. Luoyang suddenly blushed a little, and quickly looked away unnaturally. He was not a beginner who had never seen a beautiful woman. Whether it was Yu Yinlian, who was as cold as an iceberg snow lotus, or Nzesu, who was as gentle as a lake as it water lily, they were not inferior to Shilili in terms of appearance and temperament. But the girl's innocent and lively personality was really hard for him to resist. He had a dream of returning to his youthful high school years and having feelings for his cute female classmate. Wait. Luoyang suddenly woke up from his beautiful thoughts. She could actually make me fall for her. Could this Miss She not have an aura of lowering intelligence? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Mundo Fanfic Novelers, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelers. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 45 Everyone Loves Qiu Changtai. Point 1. Kunlun Tai King Sect, Jinlan Cave Mansion. Character Identity. Qiu Changtai. Mirror Flower Water Moon Templar covered, in the process of time and space shuttle. The body was teleported to the Jinlan Cave Mansion, and the Mirror Flower Water Moon technique on the body was adjusted accordingly. Whether it is the hairstyle or the temperament given to people, it has changed from Luoyang to Qiu Changtai. Another universal king in small light technique calmed down the emotions that were originally evoked by Shilili. Qiu Changtai calmly picked up the bronze mirror beside the stone bed and took a look at his face. Still as handsome. It seems that my appearance is very suitable for the type of elegant and noble. Putting down the bronze mirror, Qiu Changtai sat upright with his eyes closed and rested quietly. Junior brothers and sisters arrived at the cave one after another, ready to listen to the chief brother's lecture. Zihui Sengchao gave lectures to the chiefs once every 10 days, and Qiu Changtai gave lectures to junior brothers and sisters every morning, and answered questions after the lecture. After Qiu Changtai finished his speech, to blend in with the light and dust on the outside, to keep one's true self on the inside, this is the beauty of this saying, the junior brothers and sisters looked at each other, hesitant to speak. If you have any questions, tell me everything. Qiu Chengtian said lightly. May I ask you, senior brother? Chen Xin blurted out, are you and the second senior sister a Taoist couple? Qiu Chengtian controlled his facial expression very well, and did not let everyone see the clues. Instead, Zhu Yinlian, who was sitting quietly beside him, was caught off guard and said coldly, no. This is the truth. The two are only engaged, and have not officially become Taoist couples. Taoist couples are more casual than ordinary marriages, so the Tian and Zhu family let the unmarried couple decide the wedding date by themselves, and the bottom line is before Qiu Chengtian forms the elixir. Because after successfully forming the elixir, Qiu Chengtian will be the Kunlun immortal. If the relationship has not been confirmed, there is a fear of changes. The head of Ziwi's sect meant that as long as Zhu Yinglian's obsession did not worsen, it would be fine to delay it. But if it further deepens into a flaw in the Dao heart, she needs to become a Daoist couple immediately, so that Qiu Chengtian can temporarily put aside his own practice and focus on helping her untie the knot. Zhu Yinglian made up her mind to delay it as long as possible. The key is that she must form a pill earlier than Qiu Chengtian. As long as she becomes a Jin and Zhenren first, then the Tian and Zhu family will not be able to tear her face, and this matter can continue to be delayed. As for breaking off the engagement, she has never thought about it. It's not that she is reluctant to part with Qiu Chengtian, but on the one hand, she is worried about having a rift with the family, and on the other hand, with senior brother Qiu standing in front, she can reduce a lot of annoying suitors. As early as before she came to Kunlun, she had a lot of licking dogs in the family. Of course, Zhu Yinglian has a cold temperament and will not give any words to licking dogs, but she can't stand these licking dogs bribing her maids all day long and inquiring about her various news, which is really annoying. Seeing Zhu Yinglian's clear denial, the junior brothers and sisters exchanged glances silently again. Jian Qingnan held his forehead and sighed, saying, this is bad. If they knew that senior brother is still single, they would definitely overthrow Kunlun. Qiu Chengtian, Zhu Yinglian. Brother and sister, you don't know. Seeing the two people's confused expressions, Zhongti and Hua explained, because senior brother Qiu has gone out for too much training, his reputation among the outer disciples is already terrifyingly high. Now, let alone this generation, even among the outer disciples of the 279th and 78th generations, there are many who have heard of senior brother Qiu's name. In addition, among the inner disciples of this generation, there are also many loyal fans of senior brother Qiu. Wait a minute. Qiu Chengtian said puzzledly, outer disciples are fine, but I know less than 5 inner disciples. How could they become my fans? Because you were too handsome, senior brother. Jian Qingnan sighed and said, you are also strong and have a high status. If that's the case, it's fine. Anyway, we don't see you usually, so everyone treats you as an untouchable immortal idol and stays away from you. But the key is that senior brother Qiu runs out all day, puts down his airs and interacts with everyone, and gets along with them. If you are still not popular among your fellow disciples in Kunlun, that would be a strange thing, right? Qiu Chengtian was silent for a moment, and could not help but secretly say that it was a bad idea. Blame my personality charm that has nowhere to go. Originally, I just wanted to find someone to show off and brush the synchronization value, but I didn't expect that the invincible personality was established, and I cultivated a large group of fans for myself. We're from Kunlun together, and we are righteous to help each other. Yan Zichua suddenly stood up and bowed respectfully, senior brother, your generous words in the past, I have also heard from my fellow disciples recently. Your words are profound, awakening and impressive, please accept my go. Qiu Chengtian. No. This is just because they want to thank me endlessly after I took action, so I stuffed their mouths with beautiful words. How can it be a proof of my noble character? After Yan Zichua finished his big go, Yuanzhen sneered and turned his head away. Everyone also knew about the harsh character of this third senior brother, so they didn't care much. Jian Qingnan smiled and said, that's true. If it were any other chief senior brother, how could he be so kind? We came from Kunlun together, so we are helping each other out of righteousness. Not only did the fourth senior brother like this, but even several female inner disciples I know are very touched after hearing it, so they asked me to find out whether the eldest senior brother and the second senior sister are in a Taoist couple relationship. If the senior brother has been taken by Sister Yinlin, then they have no chance at all, and can only secretly love him behind his back. If they knew that the senior brother has not yet become a Taoist couple with Sister Yinlin, I guess they would be eager to fight for him. Zhu Yinglian. What, someone wants to fight with me? Although she asked herself that she had no interest in Qiu Chang'an in terms of sex, the word fight directly stimulated her fighting spirit. When everyone saw her face sank, they knew that even if Zhu Yingyan had not yet become a Taoist couple with Qiu Chang'an, the two of them did not look like a pure senior brother and sister relationship at this time. Well, I'm really unworthy at being the chief because of the kindness of my fellow disciples. Qiu Chang'an finally spoke. However, I'm not in the mood to think about love affairs at the moment. Junior sister, if you meet them next time, you can tell them what I said. Zhu Yingyan's expression eased. I won't do that. Jian Qingnan said with a smile, they like you, senior brother, not me. How can I speak for you and reject them? That's right. Zhu Yingyan said expressionlessly, if you want to refuse, just refuse it yourself. What's the point of letting Qingnan speak? How can Qingnan speak for you without any evidence? What if people suspect that there is someone behind Qingnan? Well, everyone knows that Qingnan is my junior sister. Who else could have asked her to relay these words except me? Qiu Chang'an had just said half of the sentence when Zhu Yingyan stared at him with a terrifying look as if she wanted to kill someone. Then he reacted quickly, changed the subject, and said, but what junior sisters you said makes sense. Well, junior sister, don't mention it for now, I have my own ideas. Anyway, there is no harem. Since I, Qiu Chang'an, have agreed to become a Taoist partner with junior sisters you, I will never touch another woman again. Chapter 46. What's so difficult about a mere formation? Qiu Chang'an of Kunlun Taiking sect is currently the 280th generation chief disciple of Kunlun. He practices the secret Kunlun Supreme Qi refining technique 9 Heavens Qingwei entry mantra. This Qi refining technique is difficult to learn and understand, but the extracted true Qi and true essence are extremely pure, and there will be precious additional bonuses in the final grade of Dajie and Wing. In addition, after practicing to the first level, there is a derivative Taoist method Universal King and Small Light technique, which is used to heal wounds, cure diseases, exorcise evil spirits, purify the heart. When you were in doubt, you can use it directly, which also has various advantages. In addition to Qi refining, Qiu Chang'an also has a 7th level gold flying sword Yin and a thunder method Yushulei. Yin sword is a flexible conventional attack method, while Yushulei is used as an explosive killer. Overall, Qiu Chang'an's combat strength is obviously much stronger than Ling Yunpo, and far better than Luo Yan, who is powerless. Of course, these three identities are just virtual identities after all, and the body under the illusion is still the same. All the abilities are actually his own. Next, there are 3 things to do. First, go out for daily training, find fellow disciples to establish a persona, and brush up the synchronization value. As for the reputation of the chief, Qiu Chang'an doesn't really care. In a sect of cultivation, strength is king. What's the use of being famous? Second, continue to study the 5 Thunders orthodoxy. Jade Pivot Thunder is his trump card, and he must master it very well. As for the clue of the divine thunder given by Yadazu last time, because the location is in the distant southeast Yangzhou, Qiu Chang'an does not plan to run all the way there before fully mastering the Jade Pivot Thunder at hand. The third is to prepare for the trial of leaving the palace. Although the specific content of the trial is not known for the time being, it can be guessed that the Li Palace, as a relic of the ancient Changzhou, will definitely focus on the qualifications that Changzhou cares about. That is, the cultivation mentality, root-bone combat power and wisdom and understanding that Kunlun, Shushan and Penglai pay attention to respectively. Coincidentally, no matter which of them is examined, Qiu Chang'an is not panicked at all, so he continues to go out for training calmly. On this day, he was wandering around the Uxu Peak Deacon Hall and encountered an interesting task: go to Qinglan to rescue a group of trapped Penglai disciples. It is said that these Penglai disciples, according to a secret clue, found the cave left by the ancient Changzhou in Qinglan, but accidentally touched the formation in it, causing most of them to be trapped inside. Fortunately, a female disciple was lucky enough not to be trapped in it, so she hurriedly flew to the nearby Qinglan Deacon Hall for help, and happened to meet Qiu Chang'an. Qiu Chang'an followed the other party and arrived at the Qinglan cave heaven on his sword. He saw the frightened shouts of the Penglai disciples behind the dense vines. Senior Sister Billion. Are you back? The female Penglai disciple named Billion hurriedly shouted across the vines. It's me. I brought the chief of Kunlun, fellow Taoist Qiu, to help. Upon hearing this, the Penglai disciples inside began to chatter and shout, and it was impossible to hear what they were saying. Qiu Chang's time walked forward calmly, and his spiritual sense swept over the lush vines that were obviously growing abnormally, and compared it with the knowledge of the formation in Wu Yan's mind. It should be the Immortal Dragon formation. He frowned and said, Immortal Dragon? Wylene's face changed suddenly when she heard this, but isn't that a mountain protection formation that can cover 100 miles? There are also smaller ones, used to protect the cave. Qiu Chang's time said calmly, you should have tried all kinds of ways to break the formation, right? Yes. Wylene said sadly, whether it's slashing with a knife, slashing with a sword, burning with fire, or violent tearing, these vines can't do anything. The more you destroy, the more they will grow again. As she spoke, she couldn't help but burst into tears. You must know that this matter was caused by her. If she hadn't accidentally found clues to the ruins here and rashly came to explore, she wouldn't have caused her junior brothers and sisters to be trapped in it. If the master knew about this, I don't know how he would punish me. Immortal Dragon formation is indeed not something you can break now. Qiu Chang's time comforted her. I think the handicraft of the person who set up the formation seems to be a cultivator of the water level. Wylene was relieved when she heard that he was not at the Jindensenrun level, but then she became embarrassed. The formation is to use the weak to defeat the strong. To violently break the formation set up by the water level cultivator, it basically requires a Jindensenrun. However, she is only a Shishi level cultivator. Where can she find a Jinden cultivator to help? Even in Kunlin, there is no Senrun she knows. It seems that I can only rush back to Penglai to apologize to the master, and ask the master to use his connections to invite a few fellow disciples who understand the formation to come. Wylene bit her lower lip and tears fell again. She felt sad inside in her heart. She only heard Qiu Chang's time say slowly, however, the level of this formation is really too poor. The 10 spiritual power injected can only be exerted at most 6 points. It is not difficult to crack. Wylene. At this time, she did not care to complain about the other party's words and kept her in suspense. She asked anxiously as if she had grasped a life-saving straw. Brother Qiu, do you have a plan to crack it? If I am not mistaken, this formation is established by the 3 talents law. Qiu Chang's time stood with his hands behind his back, with an extremely confident smile, and said, this vine is just one of the gates of the formation. The real Immortal trapping formation is actually much larger. It is composed of 3 small formations nested inside, supporting each other. He took Wylene to fly upwards along the nearby stream and soon found a pool of water on the top of the mountain. This is the Vishurunxia formation, which is responsible for converting external spiritual energy to provide the Immortal Dragon formation with what it needs to operate. Qiu Chang's time said this, and then he pointed his finger and emitted a lightning. The jade pit of divine lightning fell into the pool and instantly exploded the pool water. The pool water splashed in all directions and disappeared abruptly, leaving only a slightly wet pit. Wylene was stunned, and only heard Qiu Chang's time say again, this formation has been broken, and follow me. Qiu Chang's time took Wylene to fly down the mountain again, walking and stopping, and finally landed in front of a rock. He stretched out his hand to summon the jade smoke sword and smiled. This is the Jitu carrying formation, which is the formation base of the Immortal Dragon formation, but it deliberately disguised itself as an ordinary rock, even covering up the spiritual power fluctuations. If I hadn't calculated according to the formation veins, it should be here, and I wouldn't be able to recognize it even if I was face to face. He controlled the jade smoke sword to chop it down, splitting the rock in 2, revealing a small tripod half covered with soil underneath. After carefully putting away the small tripod, seeing that Billion had no objection, Qiu Chang's time took her back to the entrance of the cave. The vines blocking the road had withered and shriveled, but were still tough and difficult to tear apart. Look around. Qiu Chang's time shouted, is there a big tree? After a while, a Penglai disciple answered, there is no big tree, but there is a potted iron tree. Yewood must cling to Gearwood to grow. Qiu Chang's time laughed and said, in the end, just chop down the iron tree, and the formation will be solved. Then the sound of felling wood was heard inside, and after 2 or 3 times, the vines blocking the road fell down and turned into dead branches and leaves. The wood dragon trap that originally trapped the Penglai disciples was easily solved by Qiu Chang's iron. Billion watched the whole process from the side, feeling happy and excited. After all the vines fell, she finally felt relieved and exhaled a long breath of turbid air in her chest. When he looked at Qiu Chang's iron, there was also a little more admiration and yearning in his eyes. Invincible character, synchronization value +1. Kunlun mirror reminded. Looked at it, but it seems that I didn't look at it is prohibited here. In the transition chapter, the question is about foreshadowing, and then the question is about foreshadowing. Chapter 47. Sisters, you has a sense of crisis. Fellow Daoist Q, are you really only at the key refining stage? Absolutely true. But I think fellow Daoist Q's demeanor is not much inferior to that of a Jindan's Hunran. Fellow Daoist, you are too kind. Why be so formal? Just call me Bylene directly. Q Chains Iron. How could he not see what this fellow Daoist Penglai was up to? He is clearly coveting my body. Although Bylene is not ugly, she is still a level lower than the looks of Zhu Yinlian, and Zesu, Shili and others. To put it in an analogy, it is like the difference between an ordinary first-class university and Peking University and Tsinghua University. Of course, this is not the main reason. The main reason is that I and my junior sister have already made a Taoist couple engagement. Qiu Chainshine was a little distracted when he heard Bylene casually asking, does Daoist Qiu have a Taoist partner? Yes. I heard it's Kunlun's Phoenix Fairy Zhu Yinlian. Yes, that's right. See, Daoist Qiu hesitated, so it should be a marriage contract, but it hasn't been fulfilled yet, right? Bylene made such a guess. Of course, she had her reasons. That is, people who practice Taoism carefully guard their yuan yang, which will have twice the result with half the effort in practice. If they have already formed a Taoist partner, they may lose control at any time, and the mixture will destroy the yang, affecting their practice, so cultivators are often not very keen on matters between men and women. Qiu Chainshine did not answer, but just smiled bitterly and acquiesced, which made Bylene think about something. Back to the Deacon Hall of Kunlun Yuxu Peak, Bylene went in to certify that the task was completed and paid the reward. Qiu Chainshine was waiting outside, and just in time he saw Zhu Yinglian pressing down the sword light and greeting him. Brother, are you on a training mission? Yes. Qiu Chainshine smiled gently. Junior sister, have you just come back from soaking in Kunlun Spring? Zhu Yinglian was a little unnatural, and said perfunctorily, I'm also doing a training mission, and I just came back after finishing it. Qiu Chainshine smiled but said nothing. The water droplets at the end of your hair have not dried yet. At this time, Billion came out of the Deacon Hall and saw Qiu Chainshine talking to a woman in white. The woman in white was cold and beautiful, and her flying sword under her feet was a streak of red light. Who else could it be but the Phoenix Fairy? Billion hesitated for a moment, and the temporary feeling of self-deprecation was soon replaced by another thought. Is this the Phoenix Fairy Zhu Yinlian? She asked Qiu Chainshine with a smile. That's right. Let me introduce you. Qiu Chainshine said with a smile, this is fellow Daoist Billion whom I met during the last mission. She is from Penglai King Temple. Zhu Yinglian nodded slightly, and then suddenly noticed that there was a hint of well-hidden hostility in Billion's smiling eyes. After all, she was a person with a keen mind. She instantly saw through the other party's hostility and motives, and naturally she would not be stupid enough to compete with the other party in this regard, compete with him. No one can defeat me in any aspect. No one. Sensing the gunpowder smell at the scene, Kunlun Chief. No one. Qiu Chainshine instinctively felt a little uneasy and immediately smiled. Then let's say goodbye for now, fellow Daoist Billion. You are welcome to visit Kunlun Jinline next time. Next time? Billion smiled with her hands covering her mouth. So you are not welcome this time? Qiu Chainshine was a little embarrassed. I just said a polite word. Is it necessary to be so serious? He was about to explain something when he heard Zhu Yinglian's indifferent response. Senior brother Qiu will practice swordplay with me this afternoon. If Daoist fellow Billion is interested, you are welcome to join us. Billion was helpless. Swordplay and Taoism were the weak points of Yu King Temple. If it was just a discussion of Taoism, she would still be interested. The other party deliberately said that it was a swordplay, which was obviously a rejection of her. However, this also happened to test that this Phoenix Fairy really cared about Qiu Chainshine, and her possessiveness was not ordinary. It was really interesting. In that case, I won't bother you anymore. Billion smiled and said, if Daoist fellow Qiu has time to come to the East China Sea, I will definitely prepare a bag for you. There are two key points here. One is the ambiguous statement of preparing a bed for you, and the other is that only Qiu Chainshine is mentioned but Zhu Yinglian is not mentioned. Zhu Yinglian could naturally understand the hostility, and his smile became even colder. Billion flew up on the sword and exchanged a glance with Zhu Yinglian in the air. Fuck you. Then she disappeared into the sky to look for her junior brothers and sisters. Zhu Yingyan turned around, and his expression was as bad as one could imagine. He stared at Qiu Changtian with eyes that seemed to freeze everything. Ahem. Qiu Changtian coughed, and inexplicably felt like he was caught cheating by his wife, so he explained the mission. Before, it was because her junior brothers and sisters were trapped while exploring the caving Qilan Mountains. You don't have to explain to me. Zhu Yingyan turned his head and said sarcastically, Senior brother Qiu has a wide range of friends. How dare I, a junior sister, make comments casually? Junior sister, listen to my explanation. Before Qiu Changtian finished speaking, a large number of Kunlun disciples rushed out of the Deacon Hall, as if they had just formed a group to receive a mission. Hey, isn't that the chief senior brother? Someone with sharp eyes called out, and as a result, a large number of people all surrounded him, talking enthusiastically and greeting him. Hello, Senior Brother Qiu. Senior Brother Qiu looks so radiant recently, it's a sign of great luck. Chief Qiu. We have accepted the mission to find spiritual herbs. Do you want to go with us? Senior Brother Qiu. Senior Brother Qiu. I heard that you don't have a Taoist partner yet, is that true? The onlookers were mostly female disciples, and the topic gradually turned to teasing and ridicule. Anyway, everyone knew that Chief Qiu was gentle and would never get angry about this. Qiu Changtian coped awkwardly, and there were crisp and melodious laughter everywhere around him. Zhu Yingyan's eyes twitched for a moment, and she subconsciously wanted to fly away silently. However, she changed her mind and thought, if she left in such a disgraceful way, wouldn't it be seen by outsiders that she, the legitimate junior sister, lost to these shameless little bitches? Lost to, these three words popped up in her mind, and Zhu Yingyan couldn't move her legs. Murderous aura. A strong murderous aura. Senior brother Qiu Changtian, who was surrounded by many disciples, shuddered suddenly when he saw a junior sister outside looking at him like a demon. After using kind words to disperse these fans, Qiu Changtian finally got away and came to Zhu Yingyan's side. The junior sister rode away with a sword without saying a word. Qiu Changtian quickly followed with his sword and said with a smile, Junior sister, are you jealous? Zhu Yingyan. If it were in a novel, she could only use a series of ellipses to express her speechless mood at this moment. Okay. Qiu Changtian sighed, it seems to be jealousy. Zhu Yingyan. She showed a very scary expression, as if to say if you say another word, even your ashes will be scattered. Heh, junior sister. Qiu Changtian continued, I suddenly understand why you always have a cold face. He smiled gently and said, because if it weren't so, then the fellow disciples who were chasing you would only be more than those who admire me, not less. Zhu Yingyan's expression eased a little, and after a while he said, Senior brother. What's wrong? If you lose your yuan-yang body, it will slow down your cultivation speed. Zhu Yingyan said indifferently. So, I hope you take care of yourself. Qiu Changtian. Zhu Yingyan's logic of advising his senior brother. Losing yuan-yang, slowing down cultivation, losing to yourself, winning unfairly. Chapter 48. Sisters you meet Mishi for the first time. Yaxu Palace, lecture room. After the Ziwili sect leader finished his lecture, the disciples were about to leave when they heard the sect leader say, Qiu Changtian, Zhu Yingyan stay. In the surprised eyes of the brothers and sisters, the two sat on the futon, with a calm expression, without saying a word. After everyone in the lecture room had left, the Ziwili sect leader kept his eyes closed and waved the whisk in his hand, saying, Qiu Changtian. Disciple is here. Qiu Changtian said respectfully. We came from Kunlun together, and we are helping each other out of righteousness. The Ziwili sect leader said slowly, that's a very good idea. Even though Qiu Changtian's pretense skills were almost full, he couldn't help but feel a big sullenness in his heart at this moment. The head of Ziwili sect ignored his embarrassment and continued, we, Kunlun Tai King sect, and Pengliu King Temple, both originated from the ancient sect, so we also maintain the habit of regular visits to each other. Tomorrow morning, your master will be invited to visit the East China Sea to discuss many matters between the two sects. According to convention, both sides will also arrange for elite disciples of the Foundation establishment stage to meet to enhance understanding and build connections. Previous visitors were all disciples who had reached the great perfection of the Transformation Palace stage. However, considering that both of you often go out for training on weekdays, you'll go with your master this time and see the world together. Qiu Changtian. Zhu Yingyan. See the world. I am familiar with the land of Penglai, what is there to see? Qiu Changtian thought to himself. Master, do you think I usually go out for training with my senior brother? Well, actually I am just soaking in Cumberland Spring. Zhu Yinglyan thought to himself. Of course, it was impossible for both of them to tell the truth to the master on the spot, so they could only nod in agreement. Soon it was the next day. Since it was a long-distance flight, it was naturally impossible to fly a sword. Everyone came to the square in front of Yuxu Palace, and the head of Ziwei took out a treasure ship model from his sleeve and threw it forward. The treasure ship grew longer and longer against the wind, and suddenly it grew to more than 100 meters long. A group of real people and disciples followed the head into the ship. Among them, Qiu Changtai and Zhu Yinglyan, who had the lowest cultivation, naturally received another round of astonished baptism. From Cumberland to Penglai, it is almost more than 9,000 miles, but it actually did not take long to fly. In this world, the speed of boat-like magic weapons is the fastest, even better than flying swords. Almost at dusk, the treasure ship finally arrived at Penglai Island. The head of Yu King Temple and a group of elders came out to greet them and let the Cumberland envoys into the Yu King Temple residence. Qiu Changtai followed the disciples and saw the Ziwei sect master in front of him having a cordial conversation with the Shidi elder, as if they had known each other for a long time. He calmly withdrew his gaze and heard Sisters Yu beside him ask, "Brother, it seems that this is not your first time here?" Qiu Changtai smiled faintly. "Why do you say that?" "Because brother is too boring." Zhu Yinglyan pointed around. Following her instructions, Qiu Changtai saw the brothers and sisters of the waffle level looking around with interest, looking here and there. After all, in Cumberland Shanking sect, the inner disciples are almost all otakus, nestling in their own isolated snow mountain caves, practicing for 100 years without leaving the mountain. Now that they are coming to the island set for the first time, it is normal to be attracted by the vast landscape that they have never seen before. Not only the Cumberland disciples, but also the Penglai disciples who came to greet them on both sides, looked at these Chanjiao fellows from the western snow mountain, and their eyes were full of inquiry and curiosity. Judging from their attire, most of the Cumberland disciples wore white or sky blue Taoist robes, loose clothes with long sleeves, carrying flying swords on their backs, and tied their hair on top of their heads and fixed it with a high crown, which made them look extremely dignified and solemn. The Penglai disciples, on the other hand, mainly wore brocade clothes with narrow sleeves, without wearing crowns, and wore various magic weapons around their waists, such as battle flags, talisman bags, etc. More like rich young men and young ladies who were out for an outing. The two sides looked at each other, and no matter what they were thinking, they could not be rude on the surface, but just smiled. The welcoming banquet was held in the main hall of Yu King Temple, and the disciples of the two factions were arranged to sit mixedly, so that they could get to know each other and make friends. Qiu Changtai and Zhu Yinglyan found a place to sit down, and saw all kinds of delicacies on the table, mostly cold dishes, various meats, vegetables and fruits, thin slices and thick soups, and a dazzling array. Although the practitioners have already fasted and eaten wind and drank dew, it is okay to eat something occasionally, and the turbid air in the stomach can be refined later. Qiu Changtai picked up the peach from the plate and ate it slowly. He felt that it was tender, juicy and extremely sweet. It was much more delicious than the fruit snacks Luo Yan usually got from Miss Shi. "This is not a peach from the mortal world." A female voice said beside him, "It is a peach seedling cultivated among spiritual herbs, bathed in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and fruited. It tastes sweet. Although it cannot prolong life, it can cleanse the body and mind." Qiu Changtai tilted his head to look at the side, and suddenly his heart was shocked. It was Shi. At this time, this young lady who was originally fearless was sitting on his left like a lady, looking at him with some kind of admiring and enthusiastic eyes. To be precise, it was not like love at first sight between a man and a woman, falling in love. It was more like some kind of inexplicable emotion like a fancying an idol. Qiu Changtai instinctively felt that something was very wrong, but in order not to reveal his flaws, he could only pretend to be a stranger and asked with a smile, "May I ask, fellow Taoist, who is Yu King Temple, Shiluli?" Shiluli smiled slightly and continued, "Fellow Taoist Qiu, Senior Sister Billion once mentioned to me that in the caving Qilan Mountains in the past, it was you who broke the Emu Dragon Trap formation and rescued our disciples of Yu King Temple, right?" After she said this, combined with Luo Yan's understanding of Miss Shi, Qiu Changtai immediately understood. It must be that Billion went back and boasted about her heroic deeds in front of Shiluli. Shiluli is a typical girl's mind, admires the strong, hates mediocrity, and is also a senior member of the Appearance Association. I heard that Qiu Chang Tian, the chief senior brother of Kunlun's generation, is handsome, gentle, and capable. Wouldn't you be interested immediately? It's time to test his acting skills. Qiu Chang Tian said modestly. It's just luck, not worth mentioning. 7 out of 10 formations in the world belong to Penglai. I, Qiu Chang Tian, dare not show off my skills in front of an expert. Fellow Daoist Qiu was too modest. Shili said with a smile, the formation is very obscure. Even in our Yu-King temple, there are only a few cultivators who study Qing and Anjia. This is indeed the truth. Luoyang has been in Yu-King temple for a long time and knows that the most researched thing in the temple is actually alchemy, followed by talismans. There are no more than 3 companies like Tiangong Fang that specialize in making tools in the entire Yu-King temple. As for those who study formations, there are probably only about 7 or 8. It's not a fluke that fellow Daoist Qiu can break the immune trapping array. It requires profound knowledge of the array. Seeing that Qiu Chang Tian had no intention of being complacent, Shili became more interested in him and said with a smile, even my junior brother who studies the array to make a cauldron probably hasn't mastered the solution to the immune trapping array. No, he actually has mastered it. Qiu Chang Tian forced himself to remain calm and didn't want to continue on this topic. You know, his appearance and facial features are actually exactly the same as Luoyang's. It's just that Luoyang has squinty eyes. Qiu Chang Tian tied his hair up with a high crown, and the temperament modification and mental suggestion of Mirror Flower Water Moon made Shili not discover the similarities between him and Luoyang at the first time. But what if she continues to discuss Luoyang's affairs with her and suddenly notices the flaws in his appearance? She must change the subject quickly. Qiu Chang Tian suddenly stepped aside and introduced Shili to his right-hand side, Sister Zhu. By the way, this is my sister Zhu Yingyan. Zhu Yingyan was drinking tea at the moment, and heard Shili say, "Oh, Phoenix Fairy. Ha, I've heard of you for a long time." The hint of hostility in her tone immediately aroused Zhu Yingyan's competitive spirit. Shili? She asked coldly, "Do I are Elder Shiding's beloved daughter? I didn't expect that Fairy Phoenix would know about this." Shili said reservedly, "I'm so lucky." "You're welcome." Zhu Yingyan said lightly, after all, she is Elder Shiding's daughter. After emphasizing Elder Shiding's daughter twice in a row, Shili immediately heard the sarcasm in it. She has nothing good except having a good father, and suddenly couldn't hold her face. Shili's feelings for Qiu Chang Tian are not romantic, but just idol worship. Don't get it wrong, the author doesn't break up CPS. If you don't understand the difference between idol worship and secret love, you can ask your wife, girlfriend, sister, female classmate or female colleague around you. Chapter 49. More people are greedy for their bodies. It was late at night when the welcoming banquet ended. The Kunlun envoys were arranged by Yu-King Temple to stay in the guest room area on the east side. The height here is suitable, the temperature is cool, and the sea is visible when the window is opened. Every room is a perfect sea view room. Qiu Chang Tian stayed in the room for a while and planned to go out for a walk. Of course, it was impossible to meet Luoyang. Although Arjun guaranteed that if there was any inconsistency between Qiu Chang Tian and Luoyang's 2 timelines, it would be smoothed out with the art of mirror flowers and water moons. But Qiu Chang Tian was used to being cautious and naturally refused to touch these unnecessary troubles. Besides, Luoyang was familiar with the map of Yu-King Temple, but Qiu Chang Tian should not know it. If he went out at the time, he would have to pretend that he didn't know this place or that place, and ask for directions everywhere, which was too much of a headache. Suddenly, a string sound was heard outside, and it seemed that Zhu Yingyan was playing the piano. Speaking of Zhu Yingyan, he couldn't help but think of how she and Shili ridiculed and mocked each other at the banquet before. To Shili, Zhu Yingyan was like the White Lotus bitch who had a scandal with the idol brother I promoted alone. And to Zhu Yingyan, Shili was probably one of those idiots in the fan circle. No wonder the two of them disliked each other. Stepping into the courtyard outside the house, I saw a winter plum planted in the garden in the center of the courtyard. The pink petals were lightly dyed, and the faint fragrance lingered, adding a bit of elegance to the surroundings. Zhu Yingyan was sitting under the winter plum, her fingers lightly plucking the strings of the zither, making a long sound. It was the phoenix tail zither that Luoyang had obtained from the second senior sister before, and was later given to her by Qiu Chang Tian. "Brother, are you going out late at night to find Shili?" She lowered her head and asked lightly while tuning the phoenix tail zither. Qiu Chang Tian would naturally not answer this kind of clumsy question wrong, and said with a smile, "I don't know the beauty's intention, I only hear the sound of the zither." Zhu Yingyan refused to let him go, but continued to ask with his head down. Junior sister, you're stupid, don't you know who the beauty is referring to? Junior sister, Qiu Changtai sighed, after all, we are living here as guests, why do we have to conflict with the people of Yu King Temple? Senior brother. Zhu Yingyan frowned slightly and asked back, am I the one who wants to conflict with the other party? Qiu Changtai was speechless. If you ask who started the fight first, it must be Miss Shi. But she is a princess who is not afraid of anything, so why do you have to retort? Just give way, won't it be fine? However, on second thought, with junior sister's Yu's strong character, and the other party initiated the challenge, it would be more difficult for her to admit defeat than to kill her. Thinking of this, Qiu Changtai sighed, thinking that these two people would never be able to reconcile. Brother, why are you sighing? Zhu Yingyan's expression became colder and her eyes became more terrifying. Are you blaming my sister for not being reasonable? Qiu Changtai certainly understood what made her angry, and immediately shook his head and said, no. I just think that Elder Shiding has such a great reputation, and I'm afraid he will be a burden in the future. His words were obscure, but Zhu Yingyan understood that he was saying that Shilili was too easy to attract hatred, and he was afraid that he would implicate Elder Shiding in the future. So her expression immediately eased, and she even felt a little proud in her heart. Humph, how could my relationship with my brother be inferior to that of Shilili, who had just met for one day? Brother, I was just listening to the sound of the sea in the room, and I got some inspiration for good music. She plucked the strings of the zither with her bare hands, played a short piece of music, and asked elegantly, brother, do you have time to help me finish this song? Hearing the warmth in her voice, Qiu Changtai knew that his sister had calmed down, and smiled. Of course, I'll go to the room to get the flute. The two played the zither and flute together, and the lingering sound lingered in the air, filling the courtyard with spring. As for the outside of the courtyard, there was a soundproof formation, so there was no need to worry about disturbing others. After discussing music with his sister, Qiu Changtai returned to the bedroom and immediately began to call Kunlun Mirror. Load the file, Luo Yan. He said calmly, I want to confirm whether Shilili has noticed the clues. What if she has noticed? Kunlun Mirror asked. Shut up, it's just a routine. I firmly believe that there will be no problem with my acting skills. Kunlun Mirror said helplessly. Point 3. Pengla Yu King Temple, Dormitory. Character Identity. Luo Yan. Mirror Flower Water Moon Template overwritten, in the process of time travel. His body was teleported to Yu King Temple a few days ago, the Kunlun envoys had not arrived at this time, and Luo Yan set out to find Shilili. Before entering the door, he heard a group of girls exclaiming inside. Sister Lin Lang, you don't know. Shilili said in surprise, Big Brother Qiu was the current chief of Kunlun, the first new disciple of the Orthodox Church, Qiu Changtai. It is rumored that he is very handsome and has a very good personality. He is humble and polite no matter how he treats people. He is also very powerful. He is the first disciple of Kunlun's head, Ziwei's Hinran. He once led Kunlun disciples to go deep into the underground palace of the demon sect and killed thousands of demon sect disciples with a sword. He was still unscathed and escaped. Luo Yan stood outside the door. He was stunned when he heard the first part, and was even more dumbfounded when he heard the second part. Miss Shi, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't brag about cows. Where did these thousands of demon sect disciples come from? At this time, another senior sister said. I heard from senior sister Billion from Honlu Hall that one day she took her junior brothers and sisters to Qinglan to explore the cave heaven, but unexpectedly they were trapped in the dragon trapping array in the ruins. Fortunately, senior brother Qiu Changtai, the chief of Kunlun, happened to pass by, and seeing senior sister Billion crying quietly beside her, he took the initiative to help. Wow! All the girls exclaimed, what happened next? The senior sister clasped her fingers in front of her chest and said excitedly, I saw his sword light was awe-inspiring, and he was full of style. He easily broke through 3 arrays and rescued all the Penglai disciples who were trapped in the dead end. Senior sister Billion was moved on the spot and wanted to reward her with spirit stones. As a result, senior brother Qiu politely refused, saying that as a fellow Taoist of the Orthodox sect, he should help without asking for anything in return. Before leaving, he retrieved the elixir scriptures that senior sister Billion needed from the depths of the cave heaven and gave them to her, saying that it was a piece of cake and not to mention it. Senior sister Billion fell in love with him right away, and no matter how much she tried to persuade him to stay, she could only watch Qiu Changtai leave gracefully. Since then, I have been missing him and crying every day. Damn. Who made up this ridiculous story? Luo Yan was shocked. Who is that? Eileen, right. I was kind enough to save your junior brothers and sisters, but you turned your back on me and praised me behind my back. Hey, wait, something seems wrong. Senior sister Billion is also stupid. A senior sister said indignantly, if it were me, I would risk my dignity and confess on the spot. Even if it fails, it would be good to get a token from him. Junior sister Yilin, you are too greedy. A senior sister said jokingly, do you know what the price of the things used by Qiu Chang's time is on the black market? Even a strand of his hair on the pillow, made into thousands of hard knots, would be sold for 600 low-grade spirit stones in Kunlin. And there is still no market for it, and it is snatched up by all the female disciples at Kunlin. The corner of Luo Yan's eyes twitched, and he heard someone else ask, no way. 600 spirit stones for a strand of hair. A senior sister said enviously, don't you know that Qiu Chang's time is a person with a clear mind of Taoism, and has a top-level physique for Taoism that is hard to come by in 1,000 years. Those with a clear mind of Taoism are not afraid of sneaky ghosts or the three disasters. Even if it is a strand of his hair, if you keep it close to your body, it can calm your mind and clear your eyes, and it has the effect of expelling evil spirits. You know Jian Qingnan from King Zhao, right? She is the genius Taoist girl rumored 10 years ago, and now she is Qiu Chang's time's junior sister. Every month she tries her best to sneak into Qiu Chang's time's cave, and only then can she steal 1 or 2 strands to auction, but they are all snatched away on the same day in Kunlin. Jian Qingnan, it turns out that you are the traitor. I will kill you when I go back, Luo Yan thought with gritted teeth. 600 spirit stones for a strand of hair. This rumor is really too outrageous, and the traces of deliberate exaggeration are too strong. So another senior sister expressed her confusion, and after arguing for a while, Shili finally came out to refute the rumor. Don't argue, it's all true. Chapter 50. My number one fan is actually myself. My father said that when senior brother Qiu entered Kunlin, the elders almost broke their heads to accept him as a disciple. Because for those who have a clear mind, there is no obstacle on the road of cultivation, and it is a smooth road by nature. After a few decades, he will be a powerful Yuanying. So in the end, after a lot of fighting, the head of Kunlin finally overcame all difficulties and accepted him as a disciple. Wow! Hearing this, everyone could only admire, with envy on their faces. And the deeds that are rumored are also true. There are corresponding witnesses in Kunlin and Penglai, and they cannot be false. Shili said so, took out a booklet from his sleeve, and continued. This is the biography of Qiu Chang's time that I bought from fellow Taoist Kunlin at a high price through my connections. I can show you. So everyone gathered around and read it with their heads close together. Luo Yan scratched his head outside the door, wanting to go in and take a look but not daring to. He was really very depressed. All I could hear was a lot of discussion inside. There's actually a sketch of him on the cover. He's really handsome, my type. It's different from what I imagined, but he's even more handsome in the picture. I really want to touch his face. So there are such perfect men in the world. Damn it, if I had known I would have gone to Kunlin to become his disciple. Junior sister Shi, can you lend me this booklet for a few days? A senior sister asked anxiously. Upon hearing this, Shili immediately took it back, holding it to her chest and shaking her head desperately. No, I have to keep this booklet with me. Go buy it from Kunlin. Junior sister, don't be so stingy. Can I trade you the magic seal? Plus 2 East China Sea Night Pearls. Luo Yan left with a blank expression. Walking on the garden path in Yu King Temple, he began to think deeply about a question. Is this considered cheating on yourself? Of course not. First of all, Miss Shi's feelings for Qiu Chang's time can only be regarded as idol worship at present, and cannot be regarded as true love between men and women. Even if there is a possibility of a secret crush later, that will be in the future, at least not now. Secondly, Luo Yan himself has no feelings for Miss Shi. This is the key. Although Miss Shi is pretty and cute enough, she cooperates well when brushing the synchronization value. As Qiu Chang's time and Zhu Yingyan said, her personality is too immature. Because of this weird thing, she rashly angered Zhu Yingyan, who she had never met before. To put it nicely, it is called not knowing the height of the sky and the depth of the earth. To put it bluntly, it will cause trouble in the future. Of course, her personality can also be attributed to the fact that her growth environment is too superior. Her father, Elder Shi Din, can be said to be a leading figure in the refining lineage in Yu King Temple. not to mention the master of Yu King Temple. Even the Ziwei head of Kunlun has to pay respect. In addition, there are 3 golden elixirs in Tiangong. The third sister Liang Ruohui is in the Xingqian level, the second sister Lei Gain is in the Zhongyan level, and the eldest brother Ling Yushu has practiced to the perfection of the Wei level. He only needs to completely return to the void to form a fetus and become a Yuning elder. With so many overbearing senior brothers and sisters around, who dares to mess with Shiluli? Even if someone really doesn't like her, they will avoid her. In this way, it is natural to develop a self-centered character. Apart from anything else, Shiluli has not grown up completely, and she still knows to care about her junior brothers occasionally, which is already her kind nature. Although Luo Yan had to serve this young lady in order to brush the synchronization value, to be fair, compared with the gentle and considerate senior sister and the smart and arrogant junior sisters Mishu's personality is really not pleasing. Forget it, let her like whoever she likes. Anyway, Qiu Cheng Tian is me, and Luo Yan is also me. As long as I don't like her, it doesn't matter who she likes. Luo Yan returned to his workshop and continued to study his homework. Elder Shiding assigned him 3 homeworks. First, learn the way of formation and the art of casting tribot. Second, refine ki and improve cultivation. Third, serve Mishu well. Of course, the original words were not like this. The original words were ask your senior sister more when you have time. After all, with the talent of hearing 1,000 things at a time, Luo Yan could hear the subtext of his master. He responded to Shiluli's requests in various ways, and he could also brush up the synchronization value of his hypocritical personality. As for refining ki and improving cultivation, there is no need to be too persistent. After all, the refining technique of this lineage of Tiangong is 3 flowers gathering spirits, and the efficiency of cultivation is very general. It is useless to practice it, so it is better to wait to go to the Leaf Palace to upgrade. After studying for a few days, he finally waited until the day when the Kunlun envoys arrived and caught up with Qiu Cheng Tian's time progress. At this time, Qiu Cheng Tian was following Ziwei Sengchao and others into the main hall to attend the welcoming banquet, and Elder Shiding also went to support them. Unexpectedly, the senior brothers and sisters were not keen on making friends with Kunlun people. Except for Shiluli, who took the initiative to meet his idol brother, only the eldest brother Ling Yushu was reluctantly pulled there. Everyone else stayed in their own workshops, so Luo Yan didn't need to make up excuses. In the evening, after the banquet, Shiluli rushed into his workshop again. Junior brother, junior brother. She started complaining as soon as she entered the room. Wow, that Zhu Yingyan is so disgusting, I tell you. She scolded Zhu Yingyan in a crackling manner, leaving Luo Yan completely speechless. Well, in addition to the princess syndrome, there are also grudges, pettiness, and gossip. Junior brother. What do you think? Shiluli said angrily. Luo Yan, do you think it's my fault? Shiluli immediately raised her eyebrows, put her hands on her hips, and had an expression that said, I'm going to bite you to death if you don't explain it to me clearly. No. Luo Yan could only sigh and said, I was just thinking, Kunlun's chief Qiu Cheng Tian is such a romantic figure, why is his junior sister so vulgar? Hypocritical personality, synchronization value +1. Although he didn't finish the second half of the sentence, Shiluli also understood what he meant, and immediately said with a smile, well said. She is worthy of being my junior brother. Indeed, if Zhu Yingyan was just an ordinary disciple, I would naturally be impatient to care about her, but as Qiu Cheng Tian's junior sister, she does not make progress, but instead thinks about having a scandal with her senior brother all day long. I can't tolerate this. Luo Yan was also completely numb, so he simply nodded and cooperated with Shiluli to continue saying bad things, such as pretending to be aloof and pheasant with shed feathers, which made the synchronization value soar. Mishu was overjoyed, and the Yanga that was originally bickering with Zhu Yingyan finally disappeared completely. You're sensible, junior brother. Shiluli said cheerfully, by the way, let me tell you, I have organized a club with several senior sisters and junior sisters. Do you want to join it? What club? Of course it is a club for those who support and learn from senior brother Qiu. It is tentatively named Cheng Time Club. Luo Yan almost vomited blood. You want me to join my own fan club? But on second thought, it is not impossible. If I leave it alone, who knows what Shiluli and her group of senior sisters and junior sisters will do to Qiu Cheng Tian. I can't just sit back and watch. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, Subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.